Welcome, everyone, to Truro Town Council's meeting for Monday, March the 2nd, 2026. Before we begin our agenda today, I, Kathy J. Henton, Mayor for the Town of Truro, acknowledge we are on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the peace and friendship treaties and recognize we are all treaty people. We recognize African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched the part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia of over 400 years. And we recognize the Acadians who lived in harmony with the Mi'kmaq, whose communities across the province are a living testament to the fortitude of their ancestors. Today, as both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, we commit to seek harmonious and mutually beneficial relations. We give thanks to our elders and knowledge keepers. Before we begin our agenda today, yesterday I received very upsetting news that former town councillor and deputy mayor Cheryl Fritz had died. I immediately contacted Councillor Talbot and CAO Mike Dolter, who were equally shocked and saddened. Cheryl was a great support to me, a kind and caring woman, and a true delight to work with. She was a loyal and trusted ward partner to Councillor Talbot, and Cheryl had tremendous respect for our CAO. All of us on council and town staff thought so much of her. The flag at Town Hall is lowered to half-mast in Cheryl's memory. Our thoughts are with her 5 children, her grandchildren, her family and friends. Treasured memories of Cheryl will live on with all of us fortunate enough to know her. Thank you. Now we are going to enter into a public hearing this afternoon. This is a public hearing for Monday, March the 2nd, 2024, for 46 to 48 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale Drive. PID number 2030-3103, 2014-3459. This is a development agreement. Has this been advertised, Mr. Dolter?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it has.
And do we have any correspondence?
The correspondence for the application came from the Planning Advisory Committee. The staff report was provided on January 21st, 2025, or 2026. And it presented to the Director of Planning, Jason Fox, and recommended the Council approve the proposed development agreement subject to the submission of the approval of service plan, servicing plan, stormwater management plan, flood mitigation plan, traffic impact study, and that we would enter into negotiations with the developer regarding some cost-sharing arrangements for the necessary upgrades for municipal services on Ford Street and some of the surrounding streets.
Okay.
So again, that was signed by the Secretary to the Planning Advisory Committee, Angela Redmond.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with a report from the Planning Department. Then there'll be an opportunity for Council to ask questions and to have received comments from the gallery. So we're going to start first, and I would ask, so I see Mr. Chisholm's here, and is there anyone else from this development? Okay, so you might as well just come and have a seat right here in the beginning, because after we're done, there'll be questions. Okay, so our Director of Planning, Jason Fox, is going to present us with the report today. Mr. Fox, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as mentioned, this development agreement application, it is by Wallace Retirement Living Limited. It is for lands at 2238 Rexdale Drive and 4648 Ford Street. So this application was made way back in June 13th, 2024. It was for residential development consisting of 4 multi-unit buildings on lands south of Marshland Drive at 4648 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale Drive, as I mentioned. Proposal includes 2 6-story buildings with up to 60 units and 2 4-story buildings with up to 40 units. The maximum number of proposed units on site is 200. In terms of the application process and status, we're currently at step 4 of the town's 5-step development agreement application review process. The step 3 was back in January of 2025, so just a little over a year ago. There was a delay to allow for the developer to provide the required stormwater management plan, flood mitigation plan, traffic impact study, servicing plan. Those were all requested by the Planning Advisory Committee prior to this application proceeding to a public hearing, and that's why there's been such a lengthy delay between the last Planning Advisory Committee meeting and the public hearing, just to give them time to prepare those, submit those for review by the town office, town engineer's office, and then also to deal with some revisions and then submit the final versions. So these studies have been completed now and have been reviewed and have been reviewed by the town engineer's office. So the subject lands we're talking about are, as I mentioned, located south of Marshland Drive, in the vicinity of Ford Street and Rexdale Drive. The properties are identified. The PID numbers are 203-03-103 and 2014-3459. Two properties have a combined area of approximately 10.5 acres. There's approximately 34 feet of frontage on Ford Street, 82 feet of frontage on Rexdale Drive, and about 980 feet of frontage with no access, because it is controlled access at this point on Marshland Drive. This is a couple views of the subject property. So this is a view from Rexdale Drive, the end of Rexdale Drive. And that would be one of the access points. So this is just another map view of the subject property showing the town's policy area map, showing that the lands are within what's called the urban growth policy area. And this is a zoning map of the subject land, showing that the lands are also within the urban growth zone. They also have an environmental reserve zone area, which is the area along a drainage ditch for the floodplain. And then there's a environmental reserve. Then there's also a 1 in 20 flood overlay, which is the light blue hatching over the entire property. So the property is also all within the 1 in 20 floodplain. So here's a site plan that was submitted by the applicant showing a residential development proposal that consists of, again, four buildings, 2 4-story and 2 6-story buildings. Access to the site is from Ford Street and Rexdale. There is no vehicle access proposed from Marshland Drive. As I mentioned, this is a limited access road. There's no internal pedestrian or vehicle connection. Well, actually, there is a pedestrian connection now shown, but there is no vehicle connection between the 2 sides of the site. So there's the Ford Street side, which is on the east side here. And then there's the Rexdale Drive side over here. So there's no internal vehicle circulation proposed from one side to the other. The site plan features a large amenity area with a pond at the northwest corner of the site, and the proposal includes surface parking for approximately 236 vehicles. The renderings and plans do show ponds with water, so it should be noted that these may or may not be dry ponds depending on the elevation of the water table at the time. The maximum 1 to 4 slope for stormwater ponds does not require fencing, so they're proposing to make sure that the slope on the edge of the pond is 1 to 4 so that they won't be a fenced pond. There's no requirement that they be fenced at that slope. Elevation at the bottom of the pond is 8.5 meters above sea level using the, it's called the Canadian Geodetic Vertical Datum, 1928 data, or approximately 7.85 meters above sea level using the newer 2013 vertical datum. This complies with our floodplain regulations, which state that the minimum elevation of the bottom of the floodplains has to be above that 8.5 meters. And this is just a view of a couple of renderings showing the buildings. So this is showing buildings A and B, which would be the ones off of Ford Street and closer to Park Street end of the site, so the eastern end of the site. You can see 64 Ford Street, which is the blue house at the bottom of Ford Street, shown right there. The buildings are situated in 2 groups, with 2 of the buildings situated with A and B situated on lands accessed from Ford, and 2 of the buildings, which would be buildings C and D, are accessed from Rexdale Drive. The applicant has positioned the 2 6-story buildings, buildings A and C, to the north of the site, away from existing residential development on Ford Street, although they are closer to Cross Street. And I should note too, it's pretty highly idealized rendering showing mature forest cover on some of the site, the amenity areas in some cases. So just to keep that in mind, but there would be a landscaping plan that would have to be developed in consultation with the town's urban forestry coordinator. This is another rendering showing buildings C and D, which are the other 2 buildings at the west end of the site. These will be the ones oriented to Rexdale. And you can see there's the 6-story building, which would be closer to Marshland Drive, and then building D, which is the 4-story building, would be closer to the existing homes on Rexdale. These buildings have approximately 122 vehicles, surface parking, and I should note that I think the previous building had 114. So this is the buildings A and B. They had 114 surface parking spaces. Just some more renderings showing the buildings. This is the 6-story building, and then this would be the 4-story building with a 6-story building in the background. Another rendering of a 4-story building. And then just some, in terms of notes on supporting plans, so the proposal does include site grading, flood mitigation, and stormwater management plans prepared by a licensed professional engineer. The applicant's engineering consultant firm confirms that the development will incorporate flood mitigation measures, stormwater management techniques, elevation standards, and adherence to the town's land use bylaw flood mitigation requirements. So you can see this is just an excerpt from one of the plans showing the details around stormwater management. So there's a pond being proposed in this area here with drainage ditches, and there's tables that go along with this showing impervious surface calculations and runoff calculations just to demonstrate that it does adhere to the town's requirements. And just in terms of the memo from the design point, which is the consulting engineer, they indicate that a balanced cut and fill methodology will be employed for flood proofing consistent with the town's bylaws. Fill material will be sourced from within the 1 in 20 flood overlay and carefully positioned to preserve the natural floodplain capacity. Elevations will align with CBCL's identified flood risk contours, maintaining compliance with the topographic requirements in the town's land use bylaw. The town engineers has reviewed these plans and has commented that overall the stormwater management plan indicates that the development will meet the town's requirements and confirms proper connections to town infrastructure that is being proposed. So just in terms of the policy review, so this is the enabling policy that allows council to consider this application. So it's policy UG 35, which just says that council can review multi-unit residential development proposals in the urban growth policy area by development agreement. And then in terms of policy review by staff, so staff have reviewed the proposal based on the applicable policies found in the town's plan documents. Some of the issues with policy compliance will be discussed on the following slides, and these do include the need for servicing plans, traffic impact study, flood risk mitigation plan, the need for stormwater management drainage plan. Building height was a potential concern, and then also the proposed mixture of dwelling types and mixture of uses on the property. So servicing and required infrastructure. So the applicant's submission now does include detailed servicing plans and details regarding the required upgrades to municipal infrastructure. The plans now include fire hydrants, which was a request of the town's fire inspector and building officials. Ford Street between Cross Street and the applicant's property line will need to be upgraded with paving, curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And also Rexdale Drive does not have sidewalks, and these will need to be installed to provide safe pedestrian access to the site. And it is recommended by staff that this be a requirement of the development agreement, that the town and the developer enter into a cost arrangement on how those get paid for and developed. It's recommended that they be the responsibility of the developer. All connections to municipal infrastructure will require the approval of the town engineer's office, and that's stated in the draft development agreement. In terms of traffic impact, the proposed development will be entirely accessed via 2 local streets, Ford and Rexdale. Traffic impact study has been completed as requested by the town's traffic authority, and the traffic authority noted the following. The development is expected to generate approximately 50 new vehicle trips during peak hours on both Ford and Rexdale. The traffic authority notes that the Roby Ford Street and Roby Street Rexdale Drive intersections will continue to operate within acceptable levels of service through 2035 horizon year. Local residents are, however, likely to experience noticeable increase in traffic volumes and delay under future conditions. So there was some impact associated with the development on the function of the traffic or the street network in the vicinity of the development. In terms of flood mitigation, the entire property, as I mentioned, is situated within the 1 in 20 flood risk area. The town's current floodplain regulations permit limited development within the floodplain, provided that any structures are flood-proofed essentially raised above the 1 in 100 flood elevation. Site grading, drainage, and flood-proofing plans were submitted by, as I mentioned earlier, by a professional engineer, along with a memo explaining the details of their approach to these flood-proofing and stormwater drainage requirements. And this does include a balanced cut and fill approach, as well as a restriction on the placement of off-site fill below the 1 in 20 flood elevation. And the draft agreement will require that development conform to these plans. Stormwater management, applicant has again submitted the plan by a professional engineer. Town engineer's office has reviewed the plan and confirmed that the proposed development will meet the town's requirements and will balance pre- and post-development peak flows from the site. These plans must be approved by the town engineer's office before the town will issue any development permits, and this would also be spelt out in the draft development agreement. Height of the proposal was another potential issue. Proposed 6- and 4-story buildings are situated in a residential area of the town, where typical development in the vicinity of the development of these buildings was about 1 to 3 stories in height. Building A exceeds the applicable height requirements of the urban growth zone, and may have a negative impact on neighboring properties within the general residential policy area, and this specifically properties on Ford Street on the east side of Rexdale, and properties on the east side of Rexdale. The urban growth zone specifies that the maximum permitted height of a building is 0.75 the distance times the distance the proposed structure is from a general residential zone. So building A is situated approximately 70 feet from the nearest general residential zone property at 64 Ford Street, and building A is approximately 64 feet tall, which is about 11 feet over the height limit. It should be noted, however, that that property at 64 Ford Street was actually approved by council, approved for a development which was 4 stories in height not that long ago. That development agreement has since expired. However, there is anticipation that development in the vicinity of the area of those properties would be higher than the typical that you would see in the GR zone. And then the proposal also aligns with many of the town's policies. So in terms of increased residential densities in the downtown area, that's good. New dwelling units on existing infrastructure, so intensification versus sprawl is also a key feature or focus of the town's policies. Walkable neighborhoods is also important. And here we have a proposal that will introduce up to 200 dwelling units on an underutilized site near the central area of Truro. Proposal will accommodate population growth and result in increased residential densities in an existing developed area without having to require major extensions of municipal services and infrastructure to like greenfield sites on the edge of town. And proposal will also result in increased residentials in an area that's walkable to many amenities and services and employment opportunities. And although somewhat isolated from the surrounding community in terms of pedestrian connections, the proposal will accommodate new population growth in a sustainable way that does not solely rely on travel by private automobile. So in those ways, it does align with many of the town's policies. Reviewed by other departments, it was sent out for review by other departments. Feedback received has highlighted the need for a detailed servicing plan, and we've discussed this already, but floodwater drainage, traffic impact studies, and needs and details around fire department access, as well as hydrants. Director of Parks, Recreation, Culture has requested the proposal include a community garden, and this has been incorporated into the draft agreement, and there were no other significant concerns identified. In terms of public participation, I do apologize for the lack of public participation results that were included in the staff report, but I did send out an addendum to council which outlines that there, in fact, were 41 responses received after the last Planning Advisory Committee in last January. So those have been summarized here. So 41 responses, you had 37 in favor or 90.2%, 4 were opposed or 9.8%. And the comments received have been circulated as part of your public hearing package. And let's see here. Development application notices were posted on the sign. There was 3 of those posted, one on Marshland, one at the end of Ford Street, and one on Rexdale. Information was posted on the town's website under current development applications starting back in August 23rd, 2024, and it was regularly updated throughout the process. There was a mail out to 75 property owners within 150 meters of the subject properties on January 13th, 2025. So the recommendation of staff, and I also note that this is somewhat different than the recommendation in the staff report. There's a little bit more to it. I'm going to read that now. So staff recommend that council approve an application by Wallace Retirement Living Limited to develop a multi-unit residential development at 2238 Rexdale Drive and 4648 Ford Street as described in the final staff report dated February 23rd, 2026, provided that Wallace Retirement Living Limited enters into a contract on terms acceptable to the CAO to construct an extension of Ford Street from Cross Street to their lands, install sidewalks on Rexdale from Roby Street to their lands, and undertake these improvements to a standard agreed upon with the town engineer's office. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Mr. Chisholm, I'm going to get you to turn the microphone on there and push the button. And once again, with the microphone close to you, just identify your names, please.
Yeah. My name is Ron Chisholm, and I have Connor Wallace with me from ZAP Engineering.
Hi, yes, Connor Wallace here. I'm with ZAP Consulting here. We're consultant and representative on the project as well. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to open it up for questions. I just, I didn't hear anything about affordability in this presentation, so I'm just wondering if you're going to address that. And because I hear every time about dwellings being built and most people can't afford to live in them, and that's a real concern, so.
CMHC has got an affordability pathway, which is financing that's designed to allow for affordable housing, like a mixture of affordable housing in with it. So you'd be looking at perhaps studio, one-bedroom and two-bedroom apartments. So that's the path that we're following at this point, is we're applying under the CMHC affordability pathway. So that would allow for affordable living within the structures themselves.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up. I've got concerns myself, but Councillor Graham, you're up first.
I do believe Councillor Talbot was ahead of me, but
No, you're first on the screen.
okay.
Okay.
It's a two-part question. The first question that I have is regarding those, the flood mitigation, stormwater management, and the traffic study. If the public would like to see those studies in more detail than what was presented today, where could they access those?
They'd have to access them through our office. We could provide copies of that information to them.
Okay. My second question is also is the two-part question. Do you have any idea of our occupancy rate in Truro at this time?
Me?
Anybody, whoever can answer it, I don't know.
I don't have that data now, no.
No, I don't have the data either, but it's something that changes obviously as more units are coming on. I know historically in the last year or so, it's been very, very tight, but that may be changing because there are quite a few new units coming in.
There are, and that leads me to the second part of my question. I hear anecdotally that some of our new developments aren't being filled at a very fast rate. And through the mayor to Mr. Fox, I understand that the reason that we are intensifying development and building in areas that we haven't traditionally built in before was so that we could address the shortage of units in our town. But if units aren't being filled as quickly as one might hope or expect given the occupancy rates, why are we still continuing to look at developing in places where we traditionally haven't, like a 1 in 100 flood zone?
Okay, couple points there. We don't actually specify that we don't develop in the 1 in 100 or 1 in 20 flood zone anywhere. We don't have anything about showing preference to given areas of town over other areas of town other than what we do through our typical zoning regulations and policies. So there's nothing there that says we need development, so we're going to develop these areas. That's just not something we do. We try and encourage development downtown. That is correct. But as far as indicating that we prefer development in non-floodplain areas, we don't have that.
Okay.
The second part of your question, I think, around the issue of if we're not in such if there isn't such a huge demand for housing from the market, why are we still entertaining these development applications? Simple answer to that is we don't regulate the market. We don't attempt to regulate the market. It's never been the position of my office or any council that I can recall that we should be engaged in trying to anticipate what the market is going to demand, because government is notoriously slow to respond to market changes. So in two months' time, the market could totally change given on some world situation that we have no control over. It would take us 6 months to change our policies. So we just let the market dictate. If the market decides it wants to build housing, then the market will build housing. We don't try and anticipate or plan for that.
Okay, thank you. It was an informative response.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talbot.
Yes, thank you. The first point, I'm going to follow up on the mayor's point around affordable housing. I'm extremely concerned that every time a developer comes before us, they say, we're working on it. And at the end of the day, we have buildings that are 100% market priced. And that's not solving all the housing problems we have in Truro. So I'll be pushing for a much more robust approach to affordable housing downstream. My question, though, is around the flood mitigation studies. My understanding, there's 2 studies, CBCL done in 2016, done specifically for the town, and one at a later date done by the province. I did have a few calls, and the public say, why are you using the old study? My understanding is that the CBCL study was done specifically for the town, that the data set is more robust, and that it's more restrictive, and for that reason should provide better protections for the residents of Truro. So I'm just wondering, Mr. Fox, if you could respond to that, please.
Yeah, you are correct that the study that was done by CBCL was done at the town's request. It was a study done to specifically create a data set for the town of Truro that we could use to develop our floodplain mapping that we use in our land use bylaw. We've analyzed the provincial data. We found that the CBCL study was actually superior to it in terms of its level of detail. So that's why we decided to keep with that. It actually also, the provincial data did come out a little bit after we had adopted our current planning documents. So we had the CBCL data in place. But what we've also found is that there is some areas that didn't quite make sense in the provincial data. Some area up around the Gasper Cross, that area of town, there was some flood points that didn't make any sense. So we kind of questioned some of the accuracy of the provincial data and found that the CBCL study was superior in that way. And also, as you pointed out, that there's actually points where it's more restrictive. The flood elevations in the CBCL study are actually higher than what the provincial data is showing. So we wanted to err on the side of caution there as well and use the higher elevations where there was discrepancies.
Okay, thank you. And the last point I'll make, and this is not a question for anyone to answer today, but I think this report was very comprehensive. You referred any number of policies, much more than is the norm. But what I would like to see us take a look at downstream is a lot of those policies use the term limited development, and I'm not really sure that we've defined that. So, Mayor, that's something I'll be looking for us to have a discussion on going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Thomas?
Thomas? Is that me?
It is.
Thank you very much. Just looking at the overall proposal, I don't want to deal with the proposal as far as building heights, traffic studies, parking, all of that. I'm going to set that aside because I think there's something far more important than all of that. And when I review that, I don't really have that many questions regarding it. I think it is acceptable. The building height relative to the other building I'm just trying to think of the name, on Ford Street, on Ford Street, at the end of Ford Street. You know, that building looks like it's coming down and something else will be going in there. So for all those reasons, I'm not really concerned about that. But what I am concerned about is the wastewater management and also the flood mitigation plan. I sit on the PAC committee, as you know, and I said yes to it on PAC, and so you'll see that it was approved through PAC. But I said yes through PAC as long as we had a flood mitigation and water management study done prior to coming here. And I was hoping that it would come back to PAC and PAC would have an in-depth look at it. Because right now, you know, I've got so many questions about it. This is the first time we've done a major, I could be corrected on this, but the first time we've done a major development that sits on the 1 in 100 and most importantly on the 1 in 20. So it straddles both of them. And so I have lots of questions. I'll try to be as quick as possible, but I want some answers. And I'm not even sure where I'm going to end up because of the fact that we're doing something that we've never done before. We're building on the floodplain, and it's risky. And so I want some answers as to whether or not I personally will give the green light on this. So. Because this is the first time I've seen it. As I said, everything else is fine. If this project was on a different site, if it wasn't on a floodplain, it would have the green light right away. But right now, I've got questions, and I thank you for the engineer coming along. Mr. Wallace, thank you for appearing and coming and to answer some questions. So here we go. First of all, the first question has to do, and maybe this could be answered, the environmental zone. When I look at the environmental zone, it looks like there's either some building or some you know, it's being compromised in one way or another. Is that true when you look at the environmental zones that runs through the property?
I don't believe it has been.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave that one. I just noticed that. Okay, so I have several questions, and they're kind of all over the place. You're going to have to bear with me. But how much of the land is below the 1 in 20 floodplain level? Can you answer that one for me?
Yeah, so just to first clarify, I am not an engineer. I'm a planner as well.
Okay. Well, sorry.
And I just wanted to clarify just for the
Oh, you
record
work
and
for an
everyone.
engineering firm,
I work
but
with
you're
an
not
engineering
an
firm on
engineer.
this
Okay.
project.
Okay.
But just from a professional expertise level, I just wanted to clarify that I've coordinated with engineers, and I'm not an engineer myself. Coming to your question, my understanding is that the base elevation of this site is around 8 to 8.6 geodetic, and it ranges because the site isn't perfectly flat. And that is kind of what has formed kind of the basis of our analysis, essentially,
So
or
it's-
their analysis.
So it's between 8 and 8.6 meters above sea level?
Correct.
Okay. But you can't remove soil below 8.5. So it's only land that is
Yeah.
between the 0.5 and 0.6 that you're allowed to move in order to mitigate anything that is below the 1 in 20 to bring it up to the 1 in 20.
Yes, correct. So there is limited amount of land within the site that can be used within the site to.
And obviously
for
there's
cut and
enough,
fill.
'cause you've made a
yes,
plan.
and that was part of their analysis and part of our early discussions. And one of those, for example, the ponds they're larger and they're actually quite shallow for that reason, because they weren't able to design them in a way that they were deeper and less footprint due to the amount of cut that would require. So they actually are designed
Right.
and located in strategic
But
locations.
you can't
that-
go before 8.5. So then the question comes is, where's the water table on all of this? Because the water table, you know, I walked that land, I hope you don't mind, but I walked that land when you first brought a proposal in. And I've never seen it really wet, but it is wet, which tells me that the water table's close to the surface. And I don't know, because I have to dig a hole, do a perk test and see what comes in and find out where the water table is and all that other stuff. I don't have a clue, but I will say I'm concerned about that, because you dig a pond and then of course, the pond fills to the water table, and now you have a storm, not a flood, but just a storm. The water comes off the parking lot, but the ponds are already pretty much full, you know? I mean, they might have 3 or 4 inches they can come up, but there's a lot of paved surface there that's going to come into those ponds. And then where does it go from there? You know, it goes on to Marshland Drive, to the ditch along Marshland Drive. I don't know the capacity of that. These are questions that I have. I sit on council. I have to have some level of comfort in this.
Yep,
And so, you know, I'll be asking our engineer, you know, in the end here of my questions, whether or not he feels comfortable.
Of course.
And he obviously has, but I would like to hear from him anyways. Is this fine, Mayor, that I carry on here? It's going to be another couple minutes.
Oh, yes,
Is
you
that
have
fine?
another couple minutes, yeah, and then we'll move on. Yes.
Okay.
Good question so far.
The driveway, I'm concerned about the driveways in the parking lots. Of course, they're not built up to 3 inches, 3.5 inches above the 1 in 100 floodplain. They're not. They're below that. And so let's talk about the fact that we have a flood. You know, Salmon River overflows. We know what that's all about. There's ice cakes and everything moves across. This is a 1 in 20, so this will probably happen. So with that stated, now you have cars in the parking lot and a driveway. The access to the building is compromised. And the cars in the driveway or in the parking lot will have water surrounding them, if not up to their doors. I don't know, because I don't know what the topography really is, where the parking lots, et cetera, but that's a concern. Do I need to be concerned about that?
Happy to respond to that. So when we were looking at the site, we were looking at meeting the land use bylaw requirements as it relates to the floodproofing measures. And to our understanding, the land use bylaw requirements around floodproofing measures were tied to buildings and floor elevations of buildings for certain uses. They weren't tied
Only,
to.
I know.
Correct. And the 1 in 20 year floodplain extends well beyond this site as well, including many streets and public areas that, in theory, in a 1 in 20 year floodplain would likely flood as well. So in those events are impactful to public and ground spaces, whether outside of this development, and it would be within this development, and that's my understanding as to why the regulations were created around buildings specifically, and it was our intent and our direction to meet it.
But you must admit, you know, that if there's a flood, you know, those cars are at the 1 in 20 or even below if you've done a cut and fill. potentially,
Yeah,
below
based
the
on the
120,
elevations,
and in an elevation. And so water could be around those cars. And just like many other areas in town, and we've seen this in the past, you know, in the shopping mall where water's up to the door handles of cars. It's not a very good
Yeah,
scene.
you can-
So that's an issue, and I'm glad that you're admitting it's an issue, because it is an issue, you know.
Correct. It's
And
applicable
a decision
here and
needs to be
elsewhere as
made
well.
whether we'll accept that or not, but it is an issue.
Deputy Mayor Thomas, we used to own Wallace Apartments that have 2 apartment buildings right on Ford Street. In the
I know them,
corner of
yes, sir.
Ford Street.
I'm aware of them.
You're familiar with those?
Yeah, and I've seen the flood around them, so go ahead.
Yeah, and we've seen the floods as well, and we've never had issues where there's been damage to the vehicles. People have had water coming up to the tires, and people have moved their vehicles in the event of a massive flood or a storm. They're all mobile. They're vehicles that people can be alerted to move them. So there've been issues that are obviously there that you've identified, but they're manageable issues, and they're issues that have historically been managed throughout the entire floodplain. As Mr. Wallace has indicated here, that those are good issues, but they're issues that apply to everybody in that entire neighborhood.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so there's nothing that we can do about that in the sense that, but they are manageable. There are issues that we can address, and I think that people do address routinely when these things, well, not routinely, but when, on those emergency occasions when they do occur.
Okay, that's very good. I think this is my final question. If you just give me one moment just to go through, make sure. Okay, when it comes to the buildings, they have to be built on a pad that's at least up to 3.5 inches above the 1 in 100 floodplain, or 9 centimeters. So that's the minimum. So where are you putting your buildings? Do they meet the minimum? Because that's the minimum, or are you actually going to raise them up higher than that? Because you can bring fill in to maybe lift them up a foot above that 1 in 100. So what's your plan there? Do you know that?
Yeah, so the final elevations are set. They wouldn't necessarily be an entire foot above that elevation because of the reasons I was mentioning earlier around the cut fill regulations within the site and the current amount of the elevation of the site itself. And it was reflected in some of the renderings, what's being brought forward as a strategy is there will be an extension of that same elevation as the floors out 3 meters around the perimeter of the building, all 4 buildings. And then from there will be a combination of design like landscaping and retaining walls or just natural berming to reconcile that grade change between the building and the surrounding environment. And then that's also accommodated with barrier-free access through ramping and stairs to those primary entrances to the buildings. So we're meeting the land use bylaw and the regulations. We have a struggle to exceed them increasingly because of the site situation, but we are able to consider them or meet them consistently around all 4
You can at
buildings.
least meet the minimum.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Pryor.
I'm not sure who this question is for, but when I look at the map and Marshland Drive, it doesn't look like there's a lot of room. And if the town has ever decided to widen the road, is there room to do that, considering that town is growing and traffic is growing?
I'll defer that one to the town engineer.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pride. We have to look a little closer to that. I suppose with the possibility of active transportation networks being incorporated into the town, there may be something to be considered with that. I mean, at this time, we didn't review it with anything further down the road or whatever a possibility. But you do bring up a good point. That is something that may restrict us. How much, I can't say at all, if it will. So I think it's something that 100-foot right-of-way? Well, we have a 100-foot right-of-way, apparently. Mr. Fox just informs me it's quite a bit. To put in perspective, municipal right-of-ways in municipal streets are 20 meters, 66 feet. Town street right-of-ways are 15.24 typically, 50 feet. So
there's more right-of-way on Marshland Drive than streets?
yeah.
And the other thing, why is there no access, like
Off of Marshland?
Yeah.
So Marshland Drive is, at least the section of Marshland Drive is restricted access, and it's a section that's, has the 70 km/h speed limit to it.
It's restricted. Is that one not 50?
In that area?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It's
still in the
50, it's 50
70.
up to a point, then it goes to 70
Yeah.
Yeah. but it
until
goes
just
to
just
70.
behind the mall.
Yeah. So isn't this one closer to
This is
Park Street?
Yeah, it is. Yes, and the 50 up to 70 occurs.
Like coming from the other way?
Yeah, coming from Park Street. Yes, well, coming when it jumps to 70, coming from Park Street towards, say, the mall,
Right, but when you're going coming from the mall,
toward Park Street.
right.
Well,
Is
you-
this
you-
not closer to Park Street than the mall? Thinking it is.
You mean the lands?
Yeah, where
The lands are?
building is being built.
Yes, it is. Oh, yeah, I know it is. Absolutely. But I believe that the speed limit drops just past, if you're looking from Park Street toward the mall.
So
Where
you're
the speed
saying-
limit changes is just past the yellow apartment buildings that are, I'm not sure, Mr. Chisholm, do you still own those?
No.
Good.
Okay, I just thought
That's
that
just
at
beyond
that
that.
area it was 50.
If it is or whatever, it's barely encroaching in. So the bulk of, I think, these two properties in question are whatever are within the restricted area of marshland.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fox, for your presentation. One question for you, Mr. Fox, through you, Madam Mayor. The land use bylaws, it is mentioned here that the development will have to meet all of the land use bylaws with the exception of the height of some of the buildings. You've talked a little bit in your presentation about the height of the building near 64 Ford Street that had a development agreement. There's also talk in the report about the setbacks and the difficulty, I guess, in identifying the exact setbacks because of the weird shape of the property and where the buildings are located. But those are the only real two issues, that's maybe the right word, but those are the only two items in the land use bylaws that are sort of requiring the development agreement, I guess. Those are the only two outside the land use bylaws.
Are you asking, those are the only two exceptions to the normal rules? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be the number of units requires a development agreement, and the height is, one of them is 11 feet too high, would exceed the bylaw requirements.
Right, okay. And then with regard to the height, there's mention in the development agreement about a mechanical penthouse. Do we have any limits on the coverage requirements or how much coverage that a mechanical penthouse is allowed to have?
No, but a mechanical penthouse, you're not going to build a mechanical penthouse excessive, there's no point in doing that other than to enclose like an elevator shaft or maybe at roof access stairs or
HVAC, et
HVAC
cetera.
equipment. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't foresee that being a problem.
Do we, and I guess this would probably be a question for the developers, do we know if mechanical penthouses are going to be employed? And if so, is it possible to have them built further away from existing residences to minimize impact?
Yeah, great question. And at this point, as you can see kind of on the drawings themselves, they're still fairly conceptual. To Jason's point, the mechanical penthouse elements are typically tied to a lot of are centered around the core, so that where the elevator overrun is located. That can be often accommodated, that's centrally located within the building anyway to accommodate its function for the internal layout. With that, it inherently kind of offsets from the roof edge and typically kind of has minimal impact that way.
Tends to be centralized, you're probably not going to see it from the ground anyway.
Correct, yeah. So yeah, I think coming back to, we aren't at that level of detail yet, but that would be kind of the general intent, is to locate a centralized location and minimize that impact when we get to that stage.
Okay, thank you. Easy question, the community garden, that's going to be for public use as well, correct? It's my understanding if it's been through Parks and Rec.
To my knowledge.
Yeah, it's through Parks and Rec for sure.
Yeah.
So that stuff, I'm not, we haven't sorted out all the details in that, but obviously the gardens are planned and
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
be
well,
dealing with them on it.
What I saw in the development agreement, or the draft development agreement, I guess, is that there will be negotiations, and if the negotiations are failed, then Parks and Rec has the ability to basically just go in and create it so that's a public garden for public use. all I wanted to confirm. Let's talk parking for a little while. It has been a while since we've seen you, Mr. Chisholm, since that last Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We talked about at-grade first floor parking. I don't see that specifically called out in the staff report. Is that still part of the plan, to have that sort of first floor of some of the buildings to be parking?
At this stage, we haven't considered that as a requirement within the agreement because of the challenge of that designing that and meeting the flood proofing requirements at the same time. It's something that can be explored, but at this stage, we are intending to facilitate parking within the surface as shown on the site plan. Yeah.
Okay, so instead of the at-grade first floor parking, that'll be residential units then?
So in that case, it would actually, the intent is to actually get the main slab of the building elevated above and have the kind of retaining walls and berming around it. So it would actually just be uninhabited space below.
So the building will start at the second floor?
Essentially, essentially the building first floor will be elevated above the perceived ground floor to get it above that floodplain.
So there's just going to be a larger podium sort of coming
Correct.
uphill to the first floor?
You got it, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then just because I know people are going to ask, and it was mentioned at PAC 14 months ago, however long ago it was, that the logistical and cost challenges of underground parking versus the surface parking. I don't want to belabor us too long here, but 30 seconds on cost and logistics on the underground versus the surface.
Yeah, I think it was, if we look back to the questions that we entertained at the very outset with respect to the CMHC and affordable housing and the cost of construction, those are all factored, and as raised, the vacancy rate, the occupancy rate in the community. The cost of construction is fundamental to ensuring a successful project. So with respect to underground parking, there's a degree of complexity when you're on a 1 in 20 and 1 in 100 floodplain to ensure you just haven't created a swimming pool. There's an issue there and it was raised, of course, by Deputy Mayor Thomas, just with respect to what happens in the event of a flood. So there's a lot of complexity around that, and it's not something that we can really commit to at the moment. It's certainly a feature that people like, but is it a feature that people can pay for? That becomes the question, and I think that's the complaint that I heard earlier from Councillor Graham, which is that there's some beautiful apartments coming up with beautiful underground parking and lovely granite countertops, and they're magnificent units, but they're priced out of range for many people. So
Yeah.
there's a real balance that has to be brought into play in order to fit the market. And those are the issues that we're struggling with in order to try to determine that we have a successful project. Because we can't make commitments today and then find out later that we can't live up to them. So, but we're very, very aware and know that those are features that people love. And having gone through this past winter, I understand why indoor parking is such a treat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And to be clear, most of my questions, I'm not generally advocating for anything.
No.
I'm just looking for the information.
Yep.
So
Appreciate
the logistical difficulties of underground parking in a 1 in 20 floodplain, as well as the cost implications. I believe at a different development agreement, you had indicated about $50,000 per parking spot for one level of underground parking and doubling that to get into the second level of underground parking. So especially when we were talking about affordability, which I will get to again in another minute, it's an important thing to recognize. Final parking question. I do see that there are two 35-foot by 50-foot sheds. I don't know what that is in Canadian metric. How many bicycles can be stored in these sheds? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, it's a bit dependent on what kind of storage mechanisms you do. But in these, you can use a lot of like vertical mechanisms and that type of thing. The intent is for those to meet most of the indoor storage requirements of the land use bylaw, and then also having outdoor racks as well for visitors, things like that. There's also been discussions about them having like a repair piece with it too, whether that's inside it or just outside of it. You know, the various tools that would be needed for bike repair. So specific design, I don't know the exact amount of bikes, but the intent is to kind of really provide that amenity space for it that's dedicated. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of context.
A little bit. I mean, when we're considering vertical storage too as well, we want to be able to consider the older population who are switching to e-bikes, who may not be able to necessarily lift these bikes more easily. I can, but for now.
Yep, absolutely.
That with certain things that we need to certainly keep in mind, and also the charging of e-bikes. Make sure that we've got that infrastructure included in those sheds. We talked already a little bit about Marshland Drive, that it is in the 70-kilometer-an-hour zone there, controlled access. Through you, Madam Mayor, to our town engineer over there, Mr. Browning, do we expect that to change anytime? Because we are, of course, have to be looking toward the future here, not just the now. Do we expect controlled access to be removed from Marshland Drive at any point in the foreseeable future?
There isn't an expectation for that to happen, but it's certainly been a discussion.
Okay. So it's been discussed, but we're not expecting it at this point.
Discussion basically was the extent of it was, geez, what if we go and change this to remove the controlled access?
Okay. Because I know that's been brought up for other development agreements, so I don't want to spend too much time on that, 'cause it's not the focus of today's hearing. But
no, we haven't looked at it at any depth yet. But you are right. I mean, it has been, there has been at least one other recent proposal that has been put forth in front of PAC, as I understand it, that that did at least ask the question about access off of Marshland Drive. So,
yeah. Which, to my next question, if we are not accessing Marshland Drive, if all of the egress is through Rexdale and Ford/Cross, is there sufficient egress for evacuation? If, God forbid, there's some sort of emergency, whether that's a flood, a fire, whatever, if we need to get all 200 of those units evacuated, do we have sufficient egress from those two streets to be able to get people out safely and quickly?
I can't answer that. There's too many variables around that we haven't looked at. The traffic impact statement, as Mr. Fox included the results of that within his presentation, spoke to the impact of this development, what it would have in relation to traffic, number of vehicles, a little bit of spoke to queuing, the increase of queuing. But that's to the extent of what was looked.
Okay. Doesn't give me the warm, fuzzy feeling I was looking for, but thank you for the answer.
Just a couple points I wanted to add to that too. Just coming back to the Marshland Drive piece, we certainly are contemplating access to Marshland Drive at this point. However, buildings A and B do include parking areas that have vehicle maneuver portions that can accommodate an access there, should it be, something that is contemplated in the future. There is ability within the concept plan for that to be facilitated. At this point, it's not being contemplated, but the design doesn't have to fundamentally be overhauled in order to accommodate an access, I guess, is what I wanted to give a bit of clarification on, should that ever come down the road. And I guess that ties into around the egress component of it. To our knowledge, that there's been review around traffic impact, egress from the site that's been reviewed by the town engineer through the study. The site also is in a position to accommodate secondary access should that become any sort of concern through its design. At the moment, it isn't, though. It's just showing access to Ford and Rexdale.
I do appreciate that, Mr. Wallace, that the plan is there that should things change, you have the ability to adapt easily.
Of course.
I appreciate that. The traffic, we do have the traffic study. One thing that was not mentioned that was asked at PAC, would there be, and I guess this is for Mr. Browning, updating Ford or Rexdale, I believe those are both currently local streets. Would the increase in traffic see an updating of those to a higher classification?
That's something we'd look at or whatever, depending on what the result of this public hearing is. We didn't look at that prior to that. It'd be a little premature.
Okay. The roadway, I understand the developers are going to be on the hook for constructing, at least from Ford to the lands. At what point, and I assume then that gets passed over to the town, that would be a town-owned piece of road until it is on their property? Is that?
Yeah, the portion, before it enters property, yeah.
Portion. Are we delaying that build for as long as possible until all the heavy truck traffic is done? Because I don't necessarily want them to build that road first and then do 20 years worth of damage to it in a year of construction. Is that something that's possible to sort of delay Logistically, it would make sense. I would think that would be something you would be looking at, but also if it's an asset that we are going to be inheriting, I want to make sure that it's looked after before we get it.
So typically, this would be a very similar scenario as to residential subdivisions, whereby we don't want to take over the road the minute that it's built, and as you suggest, or ever have construction trucks go over it over and over and over and over again. When you take a look at, and I'm speaking generalities here, whatever, with subdivisions built, typically speaking, the developer does not pave the street until vast majority of the houses are built on said street. And then further to that, the municipality or town wouldn't take over the street until it's paved.
Until it's paved, yep. And that is historical, but I don't like to be in here making assumptions, which is why I ask so many sometimes pedantic questions.
Nope, it's understandable.
Thank you for that. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about affordable housing. We do not yet have an enforceable affordable housing framework, unfortunately. You are talking about the CMHC affordable housing pathways. Is there anything else additional that you can talk about that? What percentage you might expect to have as below market rate housing in these buildings?
There's a lot of negotiating to go on. This is a path that we're on and would like to follow it through, but until we get a development agreement, until we know that we've got something, we can't engage in, we can't get too far in front of ourselves. So unfortunately, I can't provide the level of detail that you'd like to see, Councilor McGrath. It'd be nice if I could, but without sort of, it's a chicken and egg thing. We have to eventually, first of all, get this done, and then we can go and we can engage in more negotiations with CMHC in order to determine what the details are of their financing. But that's clearly the pathway that the federal government is promoting, this sort of affordable housing through the financing through CMHC. That's the pathway that we're on, and their intent is to see to it that this housing crisis that we're in is going to be addressed. And they recognize the problem that this council is recognizing, which is that there's no point in building housing that people can't afford. So that's all I provide you with respect to the big picture.
I can add a bit more context to that as well. So CMHC has had financing programs set up like this for a few years now, and they've more recently have changed their program slightly. Initially, it was around energy efficiency, affordability, and accessibility. It still is around that, but there was not necessarily as much regulation around which one a developer could choose. So a lot of developments were going down the energy efficiency route, and they weren't necessarily filling the affordability component of the plan that was intended. They've now since changed that, and I understand it's more equally required across all three categories within that financing program to make sure that there's also affordable units brought into the projects as well. Coming to Ron's point, they haven't been able to get to the detail of those discussions with CMHC yet through the financing means, but that's definitely going to be a base requirement and something that would be looked at further should the project move forward. And then secondly, I just wanted to speak to just I'm having a lot of these conversations around projects everywhere right now because it really is obviously a crisis. And with these financing programs, it's one prong that's available when developers are building market housing. The other way is to try to approach the design in the most feasible way as possible, especially in the piece of land that we're looking at today. And that was really the lens of this development approach, from an engineering lens all the way through to a building design lens and the strategy for parking, that type of thing. So those are the tools that are available right now to the development community. There hopefully are more tools that come in place, whether it's through the town themselves or through other means of government to provide access to resources to developers to build affordable housing, because the reality is building housing is really, really challenging and risky, and without having incentive, it's really challenging to deliver the affordable housing component through a market project. So these are the avenues that are certainly being explored by Ron on this project, and those are what available at the moment. And I think it's great that there's initiatives and discussions happening in council around how other approaches can be made. But yeah, just want to provide a bit more context around that.
Always love more information and more context. Data guy.
Yeah.
You mentioned accessibility and environmental. So I mean, energy efficiency, obviously that can help make a place more affordable if you're not having to pay as much for your utilities. Your accessibility considerations, I mean, I know there's a new national building code being enforced March 1st, April 1st, sometime soon. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember hearing that we were going to be enforcing it soon. And that's going to have some accessibility impacts as well. I assume you are all prepared to meet or exceed, preferably, the accessibility requirements in these new buildings?
Yeah, so just to give a bit more context on that, that is a lens that we looked at through the CMHC financing program, and all these prongs are elements that have to exceed code requirements. So there's the baseline building code requirements around accessibility, which will be obviously met here with barrier-free and accessible entrances to all the buildings, as well as an adequate amount of accessible units and adaptable units. And then through CMHC, there would be additional negotiations around further accessibility beyond that.
Okay.
The site, and especially the flood-proofing approach, has been really looked at through an accessibility lens around how we can get ramps up to the entrances that are fully accessible for all residents.
Right, and you mentioned adaptable units as well, which is really important because Nova Scotia has the highest percentage of people with disability and mobility issues nationwide, unfortunately. So that is something that if you were building into your plan, that makes me happy to hear.
Counselor, I'm going to jump in here because I've got to move along.
Okay.
You can come back. Counselor Graham's been patiently waiting. Counselor Graham?
Sure.
Another very quick question, through the mayor, to either Mr. Fox or Mr. Browning, whoever can most appropriately answer. Generally, when we receive a staff recommendation to approve, it's usually pending the approval of a stormwater management, traffic study, and flood mitigation plans. Because that's not included here in your recommendation, does that mean, Mr. Browning, that you've already reviewed and approved those plans? Can I make that assumption?
We've received and reviewed the plans, yes. So we did ask for, and it was provided, like a traffic impact study, which Mr. Fox outlined some of the findings with that. The stormwater management plan, also Mr. Fox touched on this with his presentation as well, which we did review. At this stage, to ask for an absolute final, ready-to-be-built stormwater management plan when a development agreement hasn't even been approved is a little premature. So what we do is we want it up to a level of detail where we are satisfied and confident that it's achievable. And so there might be, so once, should council decide to approve this or whatever and enter into development agreement with this particular development, there will come a point when building and development permits are going to be applied for. So at that stage, this is when the real nuts and bolts details get provided to not only us, but also the building officials, planning development department, for what is really going to be constructed. So we just asked that depending on how challenging the area would be, it requires more detail at this stage, which is what we've asked for, and they've provided to the extent that we're satisfied. But as far as what the nuts and bolts of what's going to be built, that'll be put forward in front of us or whatever, should this be approved at the building and development permit application stage.
So, Mr. Fox, why isn't that then included in your recommendation pending approval of stormwater management and?
Everything has to meet the requirements and approval of the town engineer's office. That's in the agreement. It's just standard practice for us that we wouldn't allow connections to municipal infrastructure without being approved by the town engineer's office.
But we generally see it in your recommendation.
Because you generally see it in my recommendation because we don't already have it. In this case, we already have it, so it doesn't need to be in my recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the pumping station at the end of Ford Street. Mr. Browning, can you just speak to that? Because it looks, I couldn't tell, but it looks as though it's going to impede that, or could you just give us some detail on that? Do you know anything?
I'm not sure what kind of detail are you looking for?
Well, is that going to be taken out, or is that, does it affect that pumping station? There's an old pumping station at the end.
Right.
Yeah, so does it go around that, or are you aware?
I'm not sure. I asked a question. Are you talking about the new infrastructure that they're putting in, or realignment of the?
No, there was an old pumping station. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's an old pumping station at the end of Ford Street, is there not? Like Like it's a well there that was water or?
I don't think it's actually functioning anymore. I don't think it's in service anymore.
Yeah, so that's my question. It's
oh,
not being, it's
what-
not in service,
Yeah.
so what's going to happen to it? Is it going to be removed at the town expense, or what's happening with that whole thing there? Are you aware right now, or not?
We're not aware of it right now or whatever.
Okay.
Now, right now, it has been decommissioned. It's just been there, sitting there collecting dust. If it has any impact, which it probably will, on the development.
It
then that's
appears
gonna
to me
be-
that it's right at the end of the road, so if
Yeah.
that road is to continue, something needs to be done with that.
Yeah, and
So
I
that
don't
was
think the
just quite-
details, as far as the details is how that's going to be handled, whether we pay for it or they pay for it, I don't think that topic's been broached. And
Okay.
Mr. Fox, am I correct in saying that?
That's correct. It would be peripheral to this. It's not central to this. It's,
It's not essential, but it was a question I had.
yeah, it's off-site. It's not relevant to the discussion
Okay,
today.
fair enough. What I think is relevant, and because we've talked about it, is if there is a flood in the parking lot of these new buildings, let's say they go ahead and there's a flood, and also the driveway leading into them is all at the 1 and 20, and we do have a flood, you know, and you said the cars will be removed, but it's very difficult to remove all the people. And so is there an emergency measures plan to deal with that situation,
Yes.
Mr. Dolter?
Yes, there is. Yeah, we've got advanced with fire in conjunction with the fire chief and fire department, and with the emergency planning through the REMO. We do have evacuation plans for those areas.
Because it
And
could
again-
be up to 200
Yeah.
units, it could be up to 600 people there.
Yeah, and once the project would be fully built out, we'd look at those and see if there was any requirements to make any revisions. We talked about access off Marshland Road. If we had an issue where we had to get people out, we could create access off Marshland Road if we had to. So at the end of the day, I mean, in an emergency, a lot of the standard restrictions disappear, and you do what you need to do in order to get people out. So, and that can happen. But we do have a current evacuation plan for that area.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your patience.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot?
Yes, this is for the developers, and let me say first that I recognize that developers are businessmen and that they make significant monetary investments, and they have to see a return on the projects. But getting back to affordable housing again, the affordable units, do they actually lose money, or do they simply make less profit?
The way the program works, it's not a linear sort of like 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. What happens is that you get through CMHC, you get your funding, it's guaranteed at an early stage. Typically, when you build an apartment complex, the banks aren't inclined to give you a mortgage for it until you've got it like 90% full. So you're at risk at whatever market fluctuations are happening with a fair bit of money, with interest rates going up and down and all over the place. CMHC is prepared to guarantee you a rate and allow you to get in there, and then you negotiate with them so that you'll agree to certain number in return for getting the funds at an early date, like to get the interest rate locked in and to know essentially what the interest charges are going to be. You agree to a certain number of units whereby you will charge less than the market rate in order for that, but you've actually made up a certain percentage of that because you've gotten your funds in advance and you've also gotten it at a perhaps a preferred interest rate. So you're making a little bit up on that, and then so the tenant is still paying funds, but it might not be the full market rate. So they're getting a reduced market rate on it. So there's a bit of a Rubik's Cube that has to be kind of twisted and turned in order to try to figure out exactly how it works. But that is how it works. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Part two, much quicker this time. I'm almost at the end. Still sort of on the affordable housing. I assume all of these are rentals. There are no units available for purchase, correct?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's rentals.
Which is unfortunate. That is one I will advocate for, that I do believe that we need more ownership opportunities within the town as opposed to rental. We do need rental as well, but I think we're skewing a little bit too far one way. Because we already have a stormwater management plan, I want to ask about the reduction in runoff to protect the existing residents in that area. Do you have the numbers of, because with the stormwater management plan and these development agreements, no more water can leave the site after development as it was before development. Are you meeting or are you exceeding? Are you in a position to be able to talk about the numbers there?
Yeah, to my knowledge, essentially the pre and post development balance needs to occur. And to my knowledge, they're balanced. There's not any sort of notable exceedance, to my knowledge, in this case. And I think that's again linked to some of my earlier points around just the management of the flood proofing measures and the amount of excavation that can occur on site.
Okay. And then have you looked at trying to utilize any of that stormwater for the community garden that's being built there, like for, I don't know, some sort of water storage, irrigation, rain barrels, any of that sort to help offset water usage for that community garden?
And I don't think any of those specifically have been, investigated in detail yet. I think all of them are possible. And especially with the stormwater ponds not being fenced and being more of a kind of naturally integrated feature, those things are possible, haven't been solidified yet, I guess I'll say.
Okay, possible is good. The report indicated there was the staff did not believe there was any contamination, but we've certainly heard before from, I believe, a gentleman in the gallery right now at the last BAC meeting talking about this used to be a dump. You can see glass coming up and stuff. Have there been any environmental studies or soil tests done on either of the subject lands?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any geotechnical done yet, no.
Okay.
That will be a step following, should the development agreement move forward. That will need that investigation for development,
Right.
but that hasn't occurred yet,
So-
to my knowledge.
I'm pretty confident the lands there on Ford Street and the other ones, they were never a dump. It was
Greenfield?
Was it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're not concerned that if you get an approved development agreement and you go start trying to dig or do these studies, that all of a sudden you find this contamination, now you're like, oh no, now the project's not feasible? or-
Those are legitimate risks that we have to take, and if it happens, then, we have to deal with it then.
Okay, and I think I know the answer to this question. Snow storage hasn't been called out specifically. Is there any concerns about where you're gonna put the snow for all of the vast amounts of parking that we're gonna have to clear?
Yeah, great question, and it was a discussion kind of internally as we were developing the plan, but yes, those have been contemplated, and there's space around the parking areas for various snow storage areas, yep.
Okay, great. And one final question, if you will, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Fox. CCRCE, they said they did not identify any concerns. Did they actually provide a reply, or did they just not identify, did not reply and not identify concerns?
I actually honestly can't recall. It's been so long since that was before. That's been over a year, so I don't have access to that information right in front of me here. I suspect their typical response, if they did respond, was that they're just merely looking for numbers for their own planning purposes. They don't actually ever respond and say they have concerns about levels of enrollment. What they have concerns with is their own internal planning, and that's why they want to have that information. So they're more looking for us to notify them of the development.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pryor, did you have your light on? You're good, okay. Is there any further questions from council to Mr. Wallace or Mr. Chisholm? I'm now going to open it up. If there's anyone in the gallery that would like to speak, please come forward, sir. Right there, you can sit at the desk, please. Whoop, careful. Yeah, yeah. No, we have to sit there so we can hear you, because this is on. That's okay. Just leave the microphone on. There we go. And what is your name, sir?
My name is Rod Higgins. I live at 54 Rexdale Drive.
Okay.
I've lived there for over 50 years.
Okay. Just speak right into the microphone there,
I'm
Mr. There we
sorry.
go. So everyone can hear you at home. Great. Thank you very much.
Sure. I've lived there for over 50 years. You weren't here last time that I spoke, and I wanted to know if what you people say is a go. What you say, like say if you people say this is what's going to happen, is this what's going to happen? Because over 50 years ago, when I bought the land down there and the house, me and the wife, I told this to all these people, but I didn't tell you, that we went to the town in the old civic building that was there. We went there and we were offered to buy that land on Rexdale Drive. And we went, had a meeting with a gentleman there, and he said to us, he said, why do you want to buy that land? And we said, well, just so nobody can build on the other side of us, you know. It's like being in the country down there where we live. We live the last house on Rexdale Drive. It's like the country. It's just, you have deer, you have pheasants, you have all these animals down there. And he said, why do you want to build on that land? Why do you want to buy it? And we said, just that reason. And he said, they'll never, ever be able to build down there. Now, this is what I want to know. I mean, tomorrow, can you people change your mind? You know, say, okay, we want to build it. And then the next day say, no, we don't want to build there. So what, I mean, we were taking his word for it. He was employed by the town of Truro not to buy that land. He told us, he said, why do you want to buy that land? And we told him just what I told you. And he said, oh, they'll never be able to build down there. So we never bought it. We never bought that land. And I had an opportunity, we had an opportunity to buy that land. It was pretty cheap at the time. And so, anyway, that's, you weren't here, you heard it now. And over the years, I had snowmobiles, four-wheelers and stuff, and I would go down in there. Mr. Crosby wouldn't mind me going down in there and rolling around and stuff. I don't know how they're ever going to be able to build something down there without putting fill in there. You can go the driest part of the season and go down in there and still find water. Not right at the end of the street, but you go down in there and you will get stuck. It's just there's no way about it. That land down there is wet, and if they can't bring fill in there, I don't know how in the world they're going to do. And then if they don't bring fill in, they put cement for the base of that, for around the bottom of it. That's fill, as far as I'm concerned. So those were my two questions, and I appreciate you letting me talk. And I just, maybe down the road my land might be for sale. I don't know. Anyway,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Higgins, very much for your comments today. Thank you. Are there any further comments from anyone in the chamber? Turn your mic on, please, Deputy.
Mr. Higgins, can I ask you a question? Could you come down, please? Yeah, we have to have this recorded, and everybody on the internet needs to see you. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate that. So can you tell me how many times do you see that land flood over the years? Is that, because we do have floods, and sometimes it lasts for 7 days, like 5 days, the land in that, but it's usually on the other side of the river. So what about your side of the river?
Okay.
What's your experience with that land as far as flood?
I had four floods in my basement, and it come up over 3 feet on my basement.
So in your driveway, I'm familiar with your property. In your driveway, does your driveway get flooded?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many times has your driveway been flooded in the last 50 years?
Oh, 4 times.
4 times.
And there's the where you have the I'm lost for words here.
Take your time.
It would not, the flood would not come up on Rexdale Drive, on the road itself. We had our cars and our trailers and stuff pulled out onto Rexdale Drive. And my driveway would flood, but that's why we pulled all the stuff out to Rexdale Drive.
Okay, but the land that we're talking about, and you're familiar with that, would that have been flooded during those 4 times in the last 50 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I had one time where I had a tent trailer, and I had to put a bunch of rope together to haul it back in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Thank you, sir.
no problem.
Thank you again. Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Talbot.
Yes, I do have a question for Director Fox, because right now, what we're working with allows development on the floodplain, whether we like it or not. It's allowed. My understanding also is that about 32% of the town is built on the floodplain. So if we now take a decision that we're not going to build this particular property on the floodplain because of concerns with flooding, does that have an impact on existing properties in town?
I don't know about in terms of existing properties in town, but making a decision, if council's to make a decision right now because based on the fact that the property may or may not flood, based on all the information that's been provided to you, the engineering studies and supporting documentation that have been provided, council would be making a decision. If they base it on the risk of flood at this property, it would be against their own policies.
Thank you very much.
On my property, I have my house, and then it comes like this, and then it goes down like this. Whenever it rains, this fills up with water. Right here, it fills up with water. So whatever the, wherever the water goes, I don't know, but that's at the end of my property, that fills up with the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Mr. Chisholm, if you could just go back to the desk. If this development's approved today, when would you be beginning construction?
We'd have to negotiate the development agreement, and assuming that that's finalized within a month or so, we could be looking at sometime this spring, early summer.
Okay. Do you have anything to say to Mr. Higgins' concerns?
The engineering studies, it's obviously in a 1 in 20, 1 in 100 floodplain. His testimony is obviously true. He's experienced some flooding where he is. We've got engineering plans that address those issues. We've got the berms, we've got the pond, we've got issues that are mitigation issues in place. It's apparent from the engineering studies that this can be built safely, and it can be built so that the property can exist there. And as according to the policies of the town, it's a site that's suitable to be built on if all of those proper precautions have been put in place. So that's what we presented, a plan to put forward the precautions that are required in order to allow development in that greenfield site.
There's been some very excellent questions asked by our council today, concerns about flooding, as you can appreciate, and hearing Mr. Higgins' comments, and also about affordability. There are people that are literally hanging on to try to keep a roof over their head. So building these apartments one after another that people can't afford are really concerning to us. And as Councillor Talbot said, we are very aware that developers have to undertake a huge cost to get these going. We're aware what it costs to build one unit. So, but we also want to stress here, this council is very, very concerned about having units that are affordable to citizens in our community. So I hope you've heard that clearly, so.
Heard it clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from council or any other further comments from anyone in the chamber today? Second ask, are there any further questions or comments today for Mr. Chisholm, Mr. Wallace? My third and final ask, are there any further questions or comments today? Seeing none, I declare that the hearing for 4648 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale Drive is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We're now going to proceed to our public agenda for today. This is a public council meeting for the town of Truro for Monday, March 2nd, 2026. Mr. Dolder, do you see any changes, omissions, or deletions to the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
I am going to make one little change here. I note that Chief McNeil has a time constraint today, so when we do our reports, I'm just going to ask if he could go first. So since I've made that, amendment, I need a motion to approve the amended agenda. Councillor McGrath, a seconder. Councillor Fleming, all those approved of the agenda as amended? Thank you. Agenda amended is approved for March the 2nd. Thank you. Item 2A is on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the special public council meeting on January 29th, 2026. The minutes were circulated. Are there any changes that were noted, council? Seeing none, if there are no changes identified, the special council minutes for January 29th, 2026 are approved. Item 2B on the agenda is the agenda of the approval of the minutes from the public council meeting on February 2nd, 2026. Once again, the minutes were circulated. Are there any identified by council as errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes for the public council meeting on February 2nd, 2026 are approved. Item number 3 is petitions, delegations, and correspondence. Mr. Dolter, are there any items on the agenda today for that?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4, under old business, is item 4A, the request for decision for 4648 Ford Street and 2238 Rexdale Drive for the development agreement. Mr. Dolter, if you will.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, an application by Wallace Retirement Living to permit a multi-unit residential development comprised of up to 200 units in two six-story buildings and two four-story buildings on lands off Marshland Drive, 46 and 48 Ford Street, and that is PID 203-03103, and 2238 Rexdale Drive, which is PID 201-43459. This application was reviewed by the town's Planning Advisory Committee at their December 2024 and the January 27th, 2025 meetings. Madam Mayor, and during the hearing, I did quote the letter from the PAC as being in 2026. It was in 2025, as Mr. Fox indicated.
Thank you.
So again, the council has a recommendation from the TPAC committee as a result of those meetings. So, Madam Mayor, the proposed motion is, be resolved the council enter into a development agreement with Wallace Living to permit a multi-unit residential development at 2238 Rexdale and 4648 Ford Street as described in the final staff report dated February 23rd, 2026. Provided that Wallace Living Limited enters into a contract on terms acceptable to the CAO. 2, A, construct an extension of Ford Street from Cross Street to their lands. B, install sidewalks on Rexdale Drive from Roby Street to their lands. And C, undertake these improvements to a standard agreed upon by the town's engineering office.
Thank you. I'm going to need a mover. Councillor Fleming moves, Councillor second, and then seconder, Councillor McGrath. Fleming and McGrath. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Graham.
I'd like to suggest a slight amendment to the motion. While I understand that Mr. Fox said that at this time that including approval of the stormwater management plan, the traffic plan, and the flood mitigation plan, it's already been submitted, and that's why we don't see it reflected in our motion. I would still like to see it reflected in that it's pending approval of those plans. If that's acceptable by the rest of council, I'd like to suggest that we make that amendment. Or is it gratuitous to do so? Is that why you're hesitating?
No, not hesitating. I'm just writing it down.
I would just like to comment.
Yes.
If we do that, we're going to be requiring the developer to submit a full stormwater management plan prior to. So right now we have a level of comfort that we have a stormwater plan done to the level of detail that the engineering department is comfortable with, that it can be achieved. To do what Councillor Graham is requesting would require them to expend a considerable amount of money on engineering studies that, you know, I guess at this stage, they want to have the comfort of having the development agreement in hand to secure financing, and you're asking them to incur more risk and to expend a lot of money to get engineering drawings done that may be premature at this stage. So right now we have engineering plans in hand that show that the stormwater management plan is achievable and the town engineer's office has a level of comfort with. So to do anything further than that would be putting a lot more onus on the developer to expend more money at this stage, which may not be advantageous to them and may jeopardize the project.
And Madam Mayor, and the other thing too, the reports that we currently have in hand are not typically ones we would have for most development applications when we approve them. That's why that type of wording is in those agreements, right? They've already provided that documentation because of, some of the concerns that TPAC expressed. So again, we already have a higher level of information than we normally would have, at this stage.
I understand, and I accept the response. I guess for the public record, I'm just interested in showing that this council did due diligence in requesting stormwater management plans, and I'd just like it to be reflected in some way in our motion. Is there a suggestion that you could make, Mr. Dolter, to show that?
I think, Madam Mayor, I think we have reflected that in the fact that TPAC required these reports to be provided. That's the due diligence. If that information had not been provided today, this would not be before council for consideration. So I think all of that has been done. And I think council and through the TPAC has shown that due diligence, and that's why the information has been provided, and staff has been able to do a higher level evaluation than we typically would do in order to make a recommendation to council in order to approve the development application. So I don't really think it's required again, but that would be up to council to consider amendment to the motion.
Councillor Graham?
Well, if the rest of council is satisfied, I'm happy to rescind my amendment to the motion, if anybody would like to
It hasn't
comment
been
or not.
seconded yet,
No,
Madam
it's
Mayor,
not
so
been
it doesn't have.
seconded yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I guess
I'm
if
just wondering if I
the
should go
rest
to
of,
comments first before,
Yeah.
I think maybe let's go to comments and then we'll see if we need a seconder. Deputy Mayor, you're up first.
Yeah, and as I said earlier during the public hearing, this is the first time that we have been asked to approve a development agreement on a 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 floodplain.
Deputy Mayor, I do need to correct you. There is a development currently approved for the corner of Ford Street, that corner of Ford Street and Cross Street, and that, what's that?
Stanfield's as well.
Yeah, and Stanfield
Oh,
as well.
I'm sorry.
So
Yeah,
both those are
Yeah,
developments.
but this
that
is
are
the
approved.
first, that's right. I would consider this a major development. And you're right, the Stanfield project was major and it was on that site, but that's an existing site. This site is, so it's important to me, sitting on this council, that every due diligence is done when it comes to examining whether or not this project's going to impede water flowing or, when there is a flood, that there's a plan to get people out and that there won't be damage to cars, all of that. This all concerns me. And so I'm resting my decision on the engineering department of this town to make sure that it is proper. And that's an option I have. And it's the option of first choice, obviously, is to depend on the public servants within the town and their expertise. And so that's what I'm depending on. But I just want to make sure that, you're aware of my hesitancy, and my concern and the high level of inspection I want to see in regards to the engineering that's being done. I just want to voice that and let you know publicly how I feel about that.
Director Browning, do you want to address that, please?
Well, no, I certainly appreciate the sentiment expressed by Deputy Mayor Thomas, and I guess I'll just say challenge accepted.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, would like to speak to Councillor Graham's proposed amendment, and I think maybe a solution there, because as Mr. Dolter has noted, we have done due diligence with Planning Advisory Committee. It may not necessarily be reflected in the motion, but if we could just make sure that those details are called out and explicitly in the minutes for the meeting, both the public council meeting and the public hearing where it was also discussed. That may perhaps satisfy the requirements. We do have a record that all of this due diligence has been done, if that is acceptable to Councillor Graham. Yeah, perfect. And then just to the motion at hand, I will say there were a few questions that I had that I didn't get great answers to, but I think those are minor details that will be fleshed out eventually. And at this point, especially considering everything we have heard regarding the plans for building the 1 and 120 and the flood proofing, et cetera, I am prepared at this point to support the motion.
Councillor Talbot?
Yeah, a number of councillors are being cautious around this, as they should be, and I'm trying to be somewhat cautious myself. But at the end of the day, if in fact this is approved and there is issues with water, the developer is not off the hook. He still would be required to make that right. I mean, it'd be unfortunate. I'd hate to see something happen that was damage to some of the bordering properties. But if in fact this development goes, the stormwater management doesn't correctly contain the water on the property, that has to be rectified at the developer's cost. So there is still some level of protection in place.
Thank you. Councillor Pryor?
Are we stating what we? Okay. This is a great development, and I spent a lot of time on searching for policies that would change my decision. But policy ES 41 and section 1233.6 of Truro Municipal Planning Strategy identify the 1 in 20 floodway as the highest flood risk hazard area and place strict controls on development to protect its drainage function. This application proposes new development within that mapped floodway. And when considered alongside the provincial statement of interest on the flood risk areas under the Municipal Government Act, the direction is clear that development in floodway lands must be restricted to protect public safety and ensure flood risk is not increased. While something may be technically permissible, Council must also consider whether it's prudent and consistent with the intent of our adopted planning documents. So I'm not satisfied that approving this proposal meets that threshold. And as a council member, I also have a fiduciary responsibility to avoid foreseeable long-term risk and liability to the municipality. And for those reasons, I don't think I can support the development.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Graham, I want to go back to you. Are you comfortable, do you want to stand with your motion and ask for a seconder, or I want to make sure that your voice has been heard today, so.
Well, as Councillor McGrath suggested, as long as it's very clearly identified in the minutes that we did ask for a increased level of accountability by the developer to submit those stormwater management plans and the flood mitigation and the traffic study prior to this meeting, if all of that is, if we can agree that that will be clearly outlined, then I'm satisfied with that.
So I don't think there's any problem with that. We'll make sure that that's very clearly identified in the minutes. And if it's not, when we get our minutes for the next meeting, we'll bring that back up. Okay?
Yeah,
Are you satisfied with that?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Talbot?
Yes, I've looked at this, I looked at all the policies, I reviewed this from every angle, and my opinion is to vote against this is to vote against our own policies, and I'm not prepared to vote against the policies. If we don't like the policies, we change them. We don't vote against developments. So I will be supporting for that reason.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just a little, I'm just wondering, in regards to the motion that was put out, in regards to a detailed stormwater management plan and flood mitigation plan. I thought that that was going to be submitted. In other words, what's being submitted to date gives a degree of comfortableness that this can proceed, but what's going to follow is a very detailed engineering plan. That's going to be required, and not only required, but will be looked at by our engineering department to ensure that it meets all the criteria laid out in the bylaws and meets all the restrictions. And that's my understanding, so I'm not sure why we'd want to add a motion to say that, because that's what's required, and that's what's in the development agreement. Is that correct, Mr. Dole?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, remember now, there's two parts of this process. There's a development agreement, and then there's the permitting that's required, the construction permits. So until we have the plans that we're satisfied meet the requirements, the construction permits don't get issued, so they can't go any further.
Right, okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, council, you've heard the motion that's been read by Mr. Dolter. All those in favor of approving the development agreement, please signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded? Contrary-minded, Councillor Pryor. The development agreement has been approved. Thank you, council. Thank you.
And again,
There will be a 14-day appeal period. So this is when you know you're working together in good unison. When it appears in the paper and social media platform, and when that's set in motion, the 14-day period, appeal period begins. If no appeals are approved, it's good to go. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you. See you, Ryan. Take care. Thank you. Item 4B on our agenda is a request for decision, East Hants Remo request. Mr. Dolter, if you please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the town of Truro has received a request from the municipality of East Hants seeking permission to join the Colchester Regional Emergency Management Organization, also known as the REMO. Council was briefed on this request at the February 19th, 2026 Committee of the Whole meeting. And the motion that was being brought forward today is be it resolved, the council approves the addition of East Hants to the Colchester Region REMO. This request has already been approved by the town of Stewiacke, and I believe the County of Colchester is in the same position. And again, it'll just go, I think, to the REMO for final ratification. So again, East Hants is just waiting on this decision from council to move things forward in the planning.
So we're going to need a mover. Councillor McGrath, seconders Councillor Graham. And Councillor McGrath, you've got your light on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to ask Mr. Dolter, in the request for decision here, under implications, there's nothing listed there. Do we have a list of pros and cons? I know when the correspondence was read at the last Committee of the Whole, you had indicated that it did sound very much like a win-win for all involved. Do we have negatives?
The only negative could be, and that's something we have to work through with East Hants, with the overall coordination of a response. There will be cases where the REMO stands up for an issue that is in this area that may have little or nothing to do with East Hants. And again, how they get involved will be discussed, and their level of response. One of the advantages and the pros of this is that it provides another component of personnel to the REMO in order to be able to continue in a longer term emergency response, such as when we had during Fiona, when we we had the EOC stood up for an extended period of time. At the end of the day, to be honest, I don't see any real negatives other than the fact that we have to work a little bit more diligently on coordination, and obviously have to have some further discussions with the provincial coordinators as well too, as the province is taking a greater role in emergency response. But that's all that comes to mind as far as negatives go right at this point.
Okay, so we don't see there being a major imbalance in them being put out responding to us more often, or us be vice versa.
No, I think that's something that can be coordinated. The one thing about East Hants, they currently have a very robust emergency preparedness strategy right now. So again, I would be more concerned if we were taking on somebody that had done very little on their own. So we can very much integrate their planning into ours. It won't mean a big burden on us in order to get them up to the same point we are. In fact, they are equal to us. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I do think that the collaboration, I'm always happy to see good collaboration, and I am prepared to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's been moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 5 is in-camera summer reports. Mr. Dolter.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. So council met on February 2nd to discuss 2 items of a legal nature. We also met on 25 February with a joint meeting with the in camera with the County of Colchester as well to discuss a legal issue. There is no requirement for council to meet today in camera.
Thank you very much. Our next item is our committee reports, and after each report, council will can ask questions, and then we'll ask for a motion at the end of all reports to approve them. So we're going to shake it up a little bit today, which is always kind of a good thing, and we're going to start with Chief McNeil to do the Truro police report for us because he's got a time constraint today. So, Chief?
Thank you for your accommodation, Mayor. February's report is as follows. We had 15 motor vehicle collisions. We issued 138 summary offense tickets under the Motor Vehicle Act, conducted 20 road safety check stops. We had 12 bylaw type complaints for noise or animals, 6 impaired driving investigations, 2 drug investigations, 80 other provincial acts like Liquor Control Act or Trespass Act, 59 mental health and well-being calls, 10 violations of court orders, 7 crimes against persons, 7 assaults, 11 thefts, 15 property damage or disturbance calls, 1 break and enter, 8 frauds, 38 suspicious person or vehicle calls, 18 alarms, and 75 calls for general assistance, for a total of 522 calls for service, with 121 of those resulting in charges. There were 162 parking tickets issued for the month and 14 speeding offenses respectfully submitted.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for the Chief today? Seeing none, Chief, you're excused. All right. Our next report is from our CAO, Mike Dolter. Mr. Dolter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, my report ending for the month of February, which was an interesting month indeed. Yeah. So again, I keep tweaking the format of my report a little bit, but I think I've finally settled on it. Council will note that each of my comments I'm linking back to the strategic plan, so I'll go through that and just highlight that as I go back through. So starting off, general grouping of governance and community events, and under the goal of inclusive and welcoming communities. African Heritage Month flag raising took place on February 3rd, 2026. Council and staff participated in the flag raising to mark the start of African Heritage Month. While delayed one day because of weather, the event was well attended by local community members. Mayor Hinton addressed those in attendance about the importance of the month and the town's continuing commitment to work with the community through the African Nova Scotian Community Strategy Committee, and we talked about other initiatives that the town supports. So again, Madam Mayor, I think it all went quite well.
Yes.
From a trust and transparency goal perspective, I talked about the rec board and discussions on the NSP's site. In February, we continued meeting and working with the new society board, the province, and senior managers at the from the Rath Easing Center to address ongoing issues arising from the recent governance and operational changes. As has been shared publicly, the board made the decision to close the Rustic Table restaurant after reviewing financials provided by the senior management team. These confirm the poor results previously identified through conversations with management. The board expects to receive the REC's proposed budget in the next few weeks. In fact, we should get that this week, which will be presented to municipal councils once approved by the REC board as per the operating agreement. We continue to work with the province to determine if the Nova Scotia Stampede can be supported for the 2026 season. Under looking at financial and strategic plans and under the integrated mobility goal, public transit financial analysis happened. We reviewed that on February 3rd, 2026. So a draft report was received in January 31st, and the stakeholder advisory committee met on February 11th to review that plan. Currently, staff are requesting changes and additions to the report and are working with Arcadis to address deficiencies. Staff are meeting with Arcadis the first week of March to determine an update on the timeline. As well, Madam Mayor, we did look at some of the financial breakdowns and assumptions that were made through the plan, and staff have been looking at that. And as we get into the budget process, we'll be reflecting some of those assumptions and some information to be approved for council in the coming year, should we move forward. So we're also under prioritized municipal spending. The consolidated budget review was done on February 9, 2026. Senior staff met to review the draft consolidated budget for the 26-27. This budget reflects departmental requirements, revenue projections, and known contractual obligations for the coming year. We also reviewed the draft capital budget that has been prioritized for council's review. After this meeting, senior staff were asked to make additional reductions to provide an increase to our reserves overall. We're scheduled to meet with council this week to review and revise the budget with the plan to have the final draft budget ready for approval at the April public council meeting if council agrees to do so. Under the external relations and communications, under the talent attraction and retention goal, we had an interview with Business View magazine on February 4th, 2026. The mayor's manager of strategic initiatives and communications and I sat with a representative from Business View magazine to discuss the progress the town is making and the initiatives that council has enacted over the last few years. Our development success and the redevelopment of the former TAC grounds, now number 2 Construction Battalion Athletic Facility, were key parts of the messaging. The online publication has a wide circulation. The article that we contributed to will be in the spring issue of the publication. So under sustainable environment adaptation and resiliency goal, council and staff met with our consultants as we launched the climate and resiliency plan for the town. The study is expected to be delivered in the fall of 2026. The climate risk and resiliency plan will assess the town's vulnerability to climate change impacts, including extreme heat, flooding, wildfire, invasive species, and storms, and will develop strategies to mitigate risks and build resiliency. Funds for this project were provided through FCM's Climate Ready Plans and Process Program, and this meeting took place, Madam Mayor, on the 18th of February. Under the committee's advisory board's safety and resiliency goal, the province conducted a session for CAOs and elected officials to provide information about the fire modernization project. Feedback from officials was provided about how to implement the recommendations that came from the FSAN's governance review report. The province's intent was to get a better understanding of what municipalities need to help move the FSAN's recommendations forward. It was made clear that this will be a multi-year process. This plan will be fully implemented by March 2029. Now, with respect to strategic initiatives and communications, and some of the items that I included actually were in this report, but I've already covered them. So under the fleet electrification study, as outlined previously, as a recommended action of the town's community energy and emissions plan, the town is undertaking a fleet electrification study on its light and medium fleet to determine feasibility of converting some of the town's municipal-owned vehicles from gas-powered to electric vehicles. Phase 1 of the study is fully funded through the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service Program. A final report on Phase 1 was received in September. The town also received 75% funding for Phase 2 of this study through the Low Carbon Communities Fund. The additional 25% of the funding is coming from the town's inclusion in the Quest Canada Net Zero Communities Accelerator Program. Phase 2 is now underway with East Point, and the expected completion date is spring of 2026. The Recover Initiative with the Farmers Market. Again, council's aware of that program. We're looking at the building transformation program to develop a retrofit for the market hall on Yonge Street for the farmers that houses the farmers market. So a design workshop with Recover East Point and the advisory committee took place on February 12th, to review the findings from the site visit, start building the business case, and to explore future usability of the building. So the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. In December, the town received funding from the Department of Natural Resources to undertake a Community Wildfire Protection Plan. The purpose of developing the plan is to identify the wildfire risk within the surroundings of the town of Truro, specifically regarding potential wildfire outbreaks in Truro's Victoria Park, its watershed, and the adjacent undeveloped wood areas. An RFP was issued on January 16, 2026 to hire a consultant to help facilitate the plan for the town. The RFP closes on February 10th. Staff are currently in the process of evaluating the proposals received. Again, Madam Mayor, we also have our communications projects that were underway in the community, and those are listed there. And those are the typical advisories that we have that go out during the month. And again, we have been busy, particularly with a number of snow events we've had in the month and a lot of the public works activity that have been ongoing. There's also a list of the project funding applications that have been made, or the program funding. And again, that's for council's review. And Madam Mayor, that is my report, respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dolter. Any questions for Mr. Dolter? Councillor Graham?
People in Truro and all across the province have been talking about the budget that was just announced by the province. I'm wondering, as we move into our own budget deliberations this week, what effects of the budget should we be anticipating? And more specifically, have there been any indication in the budget that the NSPE grounds or the Stampede are in jeopardy as a direct result of that budget?
With respect to our own programs in the budget right now, longer term, there definitely will be some impact. There was 4 different infrastructure funds that came directly from the province, 2 of which we had taken advantage of recently. That would be the PCAP funding and the grid funding.
Maybe you could tell us what those, for the PCAP and grid?
Well, now you've put, just a second now, I do have a cheat sheet because we always refer to things by acronyms. And so the grid program is the growth and renewal for infrastructure development. PCAP is Provincial Capital Assistance Program. And the other 2 that were cut were the Flood Risk Infrastructure and Investment Program, which we have actually been involved jointly with the county in, and the Municipal Innovation Program, or the MIP program, was also cut. The immediate impacts will be less because we have some of those programs are carrying over into the new fiscal year, so we're finishing up a few projects. Obviously, the unfortunate part is that we typically would start applying into the 27-28 year, but those programs won't be available to us, so that will have an impact. The other thing that will happen this year, because typically they're short turnarounds, is there's a number of provincial recreation grants that would come forward. Quite a few of those have been cut, or if not all of them. So we're going to be in a situation where, we've relied on some funding and use that, we use that funding typically to run programs. So we'll have staff, but we may not have some of the program funding that we've had, and we will, if we're going to still run the program, we would have to make those up within our own or adjust the program slightly. So that's the direct impact that will have. Again, I think what actually is going to occur is yet to follow, because as I think everybody's aware, there's, we have a list of all the programs province-wide that were cut, but I don't think we're going to really have a full understanding of the impact on the departments that we typically deal with. For example, we deal extensively for the deer hunt with the Wildlife Division of DNRR. As far as we know, that, again, we don't know exactly what the details of those changes are going to be, but again, they were excellent partners over the last 4 or 5 years in helping us conduct the deer hunt. Again, we haven't reached out to them yet, but we will probably this week or next week on what that means for the deer hunt going forward. I think we'll still be able to run one, but I think the supports that they can provide will be limited. And again, we don't know some of the other departments, what impact because again, I don't think there's a detail on personnel changes that are proposed. We don't know how that's going to affect our operations in general. The other part of your question was?
Well, I asked specifically if there was any indication in the budget that the NSPE grounds will be affected or the Stampede.
Nothing specifically. We've had discussions over the last, or I've had discussions over the last week or two, which are still opening for us to make an application for provincial funding to conduct the Stampede as was done last year. So they still are open to that application being submitted. Okay. So I assume that that's a positive sign. Again, that will be up to the rec senior management staff to prepare that work to go in. But I did confirm as of last week that they are still open to that application being made. Okay. So again, we'll be hopeful. The other, just for council's benefit, the one thing that I did, we got out of a meeting we had through NSFM last week is that there's a number of federal funding programs that the province provides their share for. For example, might be 50 or 40% from the federal government, 30% may come from the provinces, and the municipality would contribute 25, 30%, whatever that would be, whatever the ratio. The province is still indicated because there's federal agreements that their portions of those federally approved projects would still be provided. So that won't be directly affected, which is positive because there are a number of programs. You know, the one that comes to mind is, for example, public transportation. Typically that's federally funded. Province will kick in a portion, particularly in capital, and then the municipalities would pick up the rest. So programs like that are reliant on, you know, our federal programs partnered with the province. Is our understanding is those are going to continue going forward. So again, that's all I know for now.
We certainly want the Stampede to carry on, Councillor, and so we're certainly behind that and pushing for it. But like with what's happened with the cuts and the job losses and the programs, we don't know, but that'll be up to the province if that proceeds, but we certainly hope that it will. We certainly hope it will. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To echo yourself and Councillor Graham about the Stampede, I think the big concern is in Mr. Dolter's report. We continue to work with the province to determine if the Nova Scotia Stampede can be supported for the 2026 season. Obviously, the Stampede brought a lot of good to the town and the region, and it's certainly something that we do want to see supported. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. The rustic table closure, I guess, which was something that I think was necessary, contrary to, say, the Stampede. It was losing a lot of money, and even if the Stampede lost some money, it brought a lot of good to the region, but I don't think that the municipalities should be competing with local restaurants by having a subsidized restaurant that we are also running. Now, obviously, we have seen some documents provided to us that are currently confidential, but I believe they were meant to be made public at some point. Mr. Dolter, do you know when those documents will be made public?
The information was provided to the rec board in a public set, and those meetings are now public. So once the minutes to those meetings are approved, they would be public documentation at that point.
Okay, and the board meets monthly, does it?
The board will be meeting on Wednesday. Next meeting's at 1 p.m.
When this Wednesday at 1 p.m.?
Yes, yeah, it's meeting more regularly at this point, given the amount of activity that's going on.
Okay, perfect, thank you. The RFD, last time we spoke at council, we had a letter regarding nonprofit tax exemption that we had made the motion for to provide a report. Do we know when that report will be provided, or will that be part of our budget deliberations?
It will be discussed during the budget deliberations, but we haven't had a time to put anything together at this point.
Okay, and then you mentioned that we are meeting this week for budget deliberations, and I assume those are public meetings. Have those been advertised so that if anybody interested in the budget can attend?
They are, I'm going to play semantics here. They are public sessions where staff are meeting with council. They're not council meetings, so they're not public meetings. They are open to the public if they wish to attend. Again, and as a result of that, we don't typically advertise those sessions, but they will be Wednesday and Thursday mornings at starting at 9 at the Douglas Street Recreation Center.
Yeah, I understand that so far I have not yet seen anybody attend one of those, but I also want to make sure that people actually know that they are happening. Certainly increases the chances of somebody showing up. And that is it for me for now. Thank you.
We'll keep hope alive that someday somebody will show up, Councillor McGrath. Yeah, thank you. All right, we've now concluded all the questions, I think, to our CAO, and we're going to move on to our Corporate Services Report, Wire Director Tara Russell. So when you're ready, Director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The attached report and financial statements provides an overview of the financial position of the town of Truro operations to the end of January 2026. For revenue, as of the end of January, total revenue was $39.8 million, representing 99.8% of the annual budget and $2.8 million higher than this time last year. Revenue is recognized when invoiced, and most accounts are fully invoiced for the year. The timing on other accounts can vary. As of the end of January, total expenses amount to $31.1 million, representing 78.1% of the annual budget, 10 months into the year. It is $1.9 million higher than this time last year. Results are in line with expectations. The financial report contains comments for both revenue and expense to help explain the variances to budget. The capital budget report is also attached. Values in this report are shown at total cost. However, some of the purchases have been partially funded by grants. $6.7 million, or 53% of the $13 million adjusted budget, has been spent as of January 31st. 3.1% of total taxes were outstanding as of February 24th, compared to 2.5% at the same time last year. This is down from 4.5% last month. Tax collection efforts are fundamental to the town's financial health, and we continue to receive a green light rating in the provincial financial condition indexes. Work continues on the 26-27 budget, with meetings scheduled later this week with council. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Director Russell? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Russell, for your report. And this is actually more probably a question for Mr. Dolter, but it is more related to the finances. Just when we were talking about tax revenue, I'm aware that the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities has a file open about trying to address the capped assessment program for taxes. Do you have any updates on where that was? Because I know there was a councillor from HRM who had also passed a motion successfully trying to make some changes to make that taxation program more equitable. Just wondering if you heard any updates, either of you. No.
No, I haven't heard anything, any progress on or any changes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to talk to you about the tax accounts receivable. The percentage outstanding is 3.1% at this point. This year was 2.5% last year. Any comment as to the level of percent outstanding relative to other years? Did you go back and take a look? Because I can't recall. I thought it was around 2.5%, and 3.1% might be a little high, but maybe it's not. Can you count historically? Is that seen as high or about where it's expected, or do you have that information?
I only have last year's information, which
Okay.
is there on the page, was the 2.5%, but I understand that it's relatively normal. No one's concerned about the levels at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. You'll be preparing for your big month next month, Director, getting your budget ready for us and for the public, so good luck to you in that.
Thank you.
We look forward to our deliberations this week for the budget. Our next committee report is with Chief Blois Curry for Fire Services. Chief.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Council. Last month, we received 65 alarms. Call categories were 5 fires, 1 car fire, 5 motor vehicle collisions, 14 alarms, 37 medical calls, and power lines down or on fire, 3. The fire inspector last month did 6 inspections, 6 follow-up inspections, 2 alcohol and gaming inspections, and 3 fire investigations. The month of February was on cause and origin investigations for 3 fires, along with associated reports, writings, and researches. Cooperation and appreciation is extended to the local building owners for committing to installing a complete fire alarm system in a 12-unit building. It makes it safer for everybody, so we'd like to thank him. Firefighter training for last month was on RIT, which is Rapid Intervention Team training, with firefighters training on rescuing downed and trapped firefighters. Respectfully submitted. Sorry, struggled there at the end.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief. Just a quick question on the car fire. Do we know what type of engine was in use for that car? Is that a gasoline, diesel?
Yes, it was a gasoline car.
Gasoline, thank you.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, did you have a question? Fine. Okay. Now we're up for planning and development and a report from Director Fox, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the Planning and Development Report for February 2026. Planning projects, update of the town subdivision bylaw. We've completed the draft of a updated subdivision bylaw. This bylaw, which was last updated in 1998, forms part of the town's community plan. The draft will be reviewed internally before being presented to the town's Planning Advisory Committee meeting at an upcoming date. National Building Code updates, effective April 1st, 2026. Nova Scotia will adopt Tier 2 of the 2020 National Building Code, mandating improvement in energy performance for new construction of small residential and commercial buildings to support provincial emission reduction targets. Key updates include enhanced insulation, energy-efficient windows and door energy consumption, energy-efficient windows and doors, energy consumption rewards for smaller buildings, and mechanical service equipment. In preparation of the adopted codes, the Planning Department has created some guides to help the public navigate and understand the new code requirements, which will be available on the town's website. Planning applications, we have 5 current development applications, 1 at 656 Yonge, 1 at 37 Braemar, 1 at Rexdale Ford Marshland, which was before the council today, 1 at McClure's Mills and Lower Truro Road, 1 at 423 Roby Street. We have a rezoning application for 7 Alice, and we have site plan approval applications. We have 4, 1 at 161 McLean, 1 at 9 McLean, 1 at 43 Willow, and 1 at 158 Queen. Building statistics for the month of February 2025, we were at $3,229,128. For February 2026, we are at $649,294. Active bylaw violations by property for February 2026, we have 34 active files in February, and 7 of those have been resolved. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Director Fox? Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Fox, for your report. I just wanted to ask you, we were talking about the new construction of small residential and commercial buildings. So 2 questions. Is that small residential and small commercial? Or is that small residential and all commercial? How does that?
Small residential and small commercial, would be my understanding.
Okay, perfect. And then do we have a definition of what constitutes small? I assume there's some sort of...
No, I don't have that information, but I would encourage you to check our website when we post the information in the coming weeks.
Okay, perfect. Because I do think it's important, that we do have some sort of cutoff, and we're not relying on, one person's perspective, because we may get varying. Well, how many people are in the room? We'll get that many different opinions on what constitutes small versus medium. Also, I have to ask, where are we at with our enforceable affordable housing framework?
I will defer that question to the CAO.
I have been talking to the province, but I'll be completely honest with the recent cuts that have been put in place. I suspect the solution that the County of Colchester would find acceptable is probably not going to occur, because again, we're looking at provincial funding to assist with the establishment of the framework and the enforcement requirements. So again, but I'm still connecting to have those conversations, but I have made the initial contact.
Okay, because it's true that, you know, the county did want the province to provide some of that funding. If these cuts don't provide that, hopefully the county will be on board with funding that as well, because that's,
The main issue will continue and always be is the fact that we have no visibility into rate structure of private developers. One of the reasons of having the province involved is to be able to set that up and to have some sort of enforcement capability. Again, it will be it'll be a challenging thing to do, but again, we're gonna have the conversation and see if the province could either assist or provide any suggestions.
okay, because surely if we have, even if we are paying for the housing navigator, the province would still be involved to help with that enforcement, I would assume, even if they are not necessarily funding that position. Because, I mean, we, as a council, discussed it earlier during the public hearing and during the request for decision on that development agreement. We are very concerned about affordability in town, and we don't have an enforceable affordable housing framework yet. And that is something that I really think that we need to make a priority soon in order to ensure that folks can continue to survive and afford to live in Truro. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talbot.
Yes. The enforceable program that HRM has, I know that's because they have a charter, but theirs not tied to anything, if I understand it correctly. Like, it's not tied to CMHC funding. It's, if you build 800 units, 25 will be affordable. Is that correct?
I'd have to defer to Mr. Fox. I don't have.
Yeah, and I don't know the details of HRM's program right off. I understand a lot of municipalities in the province operate on a bonusing structure where if you provide affordable housing units, you gain additional stories, additional units, that type of thing. That's hasn't been successful in smaller municipalities. Would be comparable to us. I'm not sure how successful it's been in HRM.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our Public Works report, and if you were a Jeopardy category and it said in Truro, what is your most frustrating word? In Truro, it may say pothole. So we'll let you take that from our director. Right now, Oliver Browning, if you want to give your report.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Mayor Hinton. As every month, I trust you've all read my monthly reports. At this point in time, I'll present the monthly highlights. Department staff completed the project planning phase of the town's 2026 street recapitalization road preservation tax funded projects and are reviewing the detailed designs completed to date to finalize for tendering. The department's office renovation work has been tendered and awarded under budget to Ridgemark Design and Construction Limited. Construction is expected to commence actually this Wednesday. The date of substantial performance of this contract for the work is May 15th, 2026. The work associated with the infilling of the ponds awarded to Dexter Construction Company Limited was completed for the season in February. Fine grading and finished landscaping are still planned to be completed this spring. Our water crew responded to and effectively repaired only one water main break on James Street during the month of February. Our transportation services crew continued with the department's snow and ice operations throughout the month of February. Department staff continued to progress the department's asset management plans and programs as time permits. This information, once all compiled and assessed, will be used to formulate the department's future 5-year capital plans and budgets. Department staff have progressed data acquisition and verification on the overall sanitary sewer system. Data related to age, material, and size have been compiled in the department's GIS model. Department staff will be progressing assessments of condition, probability of failure, and consequence of failure this coming month. Department staff continue to work on completing an in-house traffic study of the intersection of McClure's Connector, James Street, and Lower Truro Road in response to concerns expressed regarding the geometry and wait times of this intersection with the intent of identifying options for improvement. Data has been acquired and is currently being compiled for analysis. Our department has received the traffic study of this intersection from the engineering consultants of a prospective developer of the property within this area. Department staff are currently reviewing their findings to compare them with our own in-house findings. Our department, together with the Department of Corporate Services, are going to be moving forward with the water rate review study next month to review our water rates to determine the extent of rate changes necessary. As part of this work, a review of the budget model of the town's bulk water operations continues, so to improve the administration of the bulk water accounts to expand its customer base and revenues efficiently and effectively, as well as having a full property condition assessment commissioned on the water treatment plant. As noted in my report, the water distribution system has been assessed and evaluated, and this information will be incorporated into the assessment of the extent of changes to the current water rates as necessary. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pryor?
Mr. Browning, could you give a brief update on the accessibility parking spaces in public parking lots?
Sure. This is something that I guess each our department and planning are assisting the equity inclusive, turn your mic on to say that. Equity, Inclusion, Diversity, Accessibility officer that we have. We're assisting her in one of the initiatives of, just as you stated, we're going over each of the town-owned parking lots, just assessing what number of accessible stalls, parking stalls we have in comparison to what's required. We'd be looking at location of them for functionality and reasonableness, whether they need to be relocated, whether more need to be added. As you can appreciate, that's unlikely to start until the wet stuff that's on the ground and the white stuff that's on the ground disappears. But yeah, no, we're going to be providing assistance to her or whatever on that initiative.
Do you have a number that there's a requirement for?
Parking stalls?
Yeah.
That would be within our land use bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Browning, for your report. Following up on Councillor Pryor's questions with regards to the accessible parking, are we also referring to the built environment standards that have been made, I believe, made into law January 1st, but are enforceable as of April 1st?
Well, it's not our department's initiative, so I'm not going to speak for our EDIA officer.
Well, I think that's actually a provincial directive,
Right.
not so much an EDIA directive.
On new builds, yes.
Yeah. Oh, is that just for new builds? That's not
Yeah,
for
certain-
anything existing?
There's relaxed criteria for existing conditions and certain aspects of things. I mean, it's across the board. I don't know specifically for parking stalls, but as far as anything goes for like existing infrastructure, yeah, there's certain thresholds of replacement that you're going to need to meet the current present standard. Any repairs and retrofits up to a certain level are not required to meet them.
Okay, and once we have this updated number, will we have some sort of mapping available? Because I've had constituents ask me before, you know, how can I find the accessible parking? It doesn't seem like we have enough accessible parking, and I've been working on that. I did get a map from GIS some time ago that was, you know, out of date probably and difficult to look at. But like, is there something that we will be able to provide folks to be like, hey, and as mentioned earlier, Nova Scotia has the highest rate of people with mobility issues nationwide. This is something that is certainly of concern to everybody in Truro and to the province. So are we going to have that information to be able to provide to people, say, this is where your accessible parking is, this is where you can look?
That's what we've talked about, and just what exactly that looks like or whatever is still pretty early, but something certainly or whatever that will identify location is what we're eyeing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Director. And now our final report will be by Director Ashley Sims for Parks, Recreation and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. General cleanup and maintenance continues across downtown parks and trails. Outdoor winter activities remain highly popular, with hundreds of residents and visitors using our outdoor facilities daily. February has been an excellent month for skating, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, winter mountain biking, and fat biking. As we transition into March and warmer temperatures, trail grooming will come to an end, and we plan on closing the Caldwell Road Heartland Ice Surface on March 22nd, weather permitting. The canteen lease tender at the Colchester Legion Stadium has been awarded to Barnyard Grill. In coordination with the Colchester Legion Stadium management, Barnyard Grill will establish operating hours based on stadium usage. The canteen will not be operate for the general public. The town of Truro's tree inventory is ongoing, with data being recorded in the town's ArcGIS field maps. To date, 1,800 trees have been cataloged. Notices continue to be delivered to property owners where vegetation is encroaching on the public's right-of-way. Feedback from residents has been very positive. Our community drop-in programs are ongoing. For program details, please contact the Douglas Street Recreation Center or visit the town's website. The Truro Winter Long John Festival events took place from February 13th to the 16th. We are fortunate enough to have great weather this year, which resulted in great attendance for all of our events. We extend our gratitude to our partners and sponsors for hosting another great festival. The town of Truro, in collaboration with the African Nova Scotia Community Strategy Committee, hosted an African Heritage Month kickoff and reception on February 1st, along with Elders Luncheon on February 13th. Both events were very well attended. Throughout February, the town of Truro recognized and celebrated African Heritage Month, Heritage Day, Lunar New Year, and Ramadan. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Director Sims? Councillor Graham.
Just wondering about the summer student grant program. I know a number of students are hired through your department. I was wondering when those jobs will be posted.
Hopefully later this month. The goal is always around March break.
Great. And do people just visit our website to see those postings? Where do they find them?
Yes, on the website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Sims, for your report. Just a quick question. I know you've mentioned here that the outdoor rink may be closing as early as March 22nd. I assume then we're going to start shifting from our outdoor recreation loan program to the summer program. Do you have a better idea of exactly when that changeover happens? Because I don't know if many people are aware that we have that equipment loan program, but it's certainly an amazing program. I know a lot of people have made use of it, but I also shockingly continue to find out, talk to people who don't know that it's there. So I just want to make sure that when we're switching over, I want to be able to promote that to residents.
Yeah, we still lend out those the summer equipment all year round. So if someone has a space and they may want to use something in the gym, people borrow it now. But we will switch over on a regular basis as soon as we put these snowshoes and cross-country skis away.
Okay, and we do no general guideline? Is that end of March, early April, mid-April? No ballpark figure?
Yeah, just end of March again. Someone can borrow them now. So it's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pryor.
Ms. Sims, do we still have trees from the CN program last year?
That need to be planted or
that residents can?
No, that has been all allocated for.
Okay, thank you.
Director, do we have any update on the Jamie Shepherd Memorial Park playground?
Parts have been ordered, and we're just waiting for the parts to arrive and weather to permit, so then we can start installing the equipment.
That'll be good news. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Are there any further questions on the reports submitted today? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion to accept the reports. Councillor Talbot, seconder. Councillor Pryor, all in favor? Reports are accepted. Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, questions by members. Do we have any questions by members? Councillor Talbot.
Don't have a question, Madam Mayor, but I just announcement in recent budget, DOJ set aside $2.6 million for the integrated police management system. That was one of the 6 pillars, so that will be a go.
Yeah. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Mine has to do with deer, the famous deer in town, the famous Truro deer. And it's one of my favorite topics, it appears to be. I get calls about deer, about people feeding deer. And I don't know, a couple of questions. When was the last time we fined an offender for feeding deer? All I could find was 10 years ago.
And that's probably the last time we have actually fined anybody was about 10 years ago, and it did go to court, and a fine was issued.
Right. So it was, I think my research showed it was $233. and that you can get fined anywhere from $50 to $1,000 for feeding deer in the town of Truro. This is a persistent problem. It's a persistent problem that won't go away. It's human behavior that can be modified. And I think it can be modified through strict fines because, you know, I'm not so bothered by someone personally, someone feeds a deer, brings deer into town, but it affects people's neighbors. And that's where I'm hearing from is these people's neighbors. They're very annoyed by the fact that their property is being interfered with because of a neighbor feeding deer. I think maybe the fines are too light. I think maybe it should start at 500 to 1,000. I just think that it's something needs to be done, or we need to bring court injunctions to force persistent offenders to stop. I don't know. I don't have a solution to this, but doing what we're doing is not working. So I just want to throw it out there. You know, can we think of something else? I know Bible Hill just brought in a similar bylaw to what we have now back in September. So I'd like to know if they're going to have any luck with the similar bylaw, but I don't believe our bylaw is working.
I'll let Mr. Thompson address the actual legal issue, but one of the biggest challenges, Deputy Mayor, is the fact that you hear complaints, we don't get the complaints. And for the bylaw officer to follow up,
Correct.
We need an official complaint. We need people that actually saw it occur. And particularly when you get into a court situation, you can't go by, I was told that. It has to be, and the complaint has to go. And one of the biggest challenges we face is that nobody wants to put a complaint against their neighbor because we issue a ticket and you could potentially end up in court. And then and then that process would go through. So
I'm aware of that.
Yeah,
So
from a staff perspective, and the reason the bylaw is not effective is that we're not getting official complaints. And I think Mr. Fox can probably identify the number of times we've actually had somebody feeding a deer complaint. Now, there is an area where we have been pursuing it, but there is a certain number of things that have to be demonstrated in order for a ticket to be issued. And in cases where they don't get issued, there's probably a reason why, because the bylaw officer doesn't have the evidence he requires to do that. As far as the amount of the fines go, I remember when we did the one back 10 years ago, there is a limit on what we can do as far as the level of the fine and whether or not it's being punitive and whether or not the courts will actually issue those level of fines. I know, Charles, if you can speak to that, or...
I can't add a lot to that, but there's sort of two elements to the enforcement. One is the complaints and gathering the evidence to be able to prove that in court, if necessary, that there was feeding the deer. The second part of that is enforcing the fine and collecting it, which is a major problem. And in terms of the level of fines, it's been a while, certainly, since we looked at the level of fines in the bylaw. And I suppose if council wanted to, then, that's something that could be revisited.
Yeah, well, my goal is to get people to stop feeding deer, and whatever that takes. And you're right. And so someone who calls me up and says, my neighbor's feeding deer, I'm concerned about it. I say, you need to file an official complaint. I tell them how easy it is to go in and that the town has a dashboard as soon as you open up the website, and you can pick out the complaint and just hit on that, and it takes you right in, and it's very easy to do. And people have done that. They've told me they've done that and they haven't got results. So that's what I hear. I will be following up. Perhaps Mr. Fox, is that the person to follow up with on a particular, or should I call the bylaw officers?
No, you speak directly to Mr. Fox. And I know the case of the one 10 years ago, when the bylaw officer showed up, there were 20 deer in the backyard of the individual. And so a lot of times when the complaint comes in, the bylaw officer shows up, there's no deer. There's no evidence of feeding the deer. And in order to go forward, there's a certain amount of evidence that has to be provided to the bylaw officer to deal with it. Mr. Fox is light on there, so I'll let him.
Just wanted to add that it also says in the bylaw, it's not feeding deer that's actually the violation. You actually have to feed the animal to the point where you're creating a nuisance for your neighbors. That's the way it's written.
Right.
And that's where the 20 deer in the backyard, that was a nuisance, right?
Yeah,
So
you could
Right.
see how it was a nuisance. There was deer trampling through neighbors' yards, so it was clearly a problem. But just simply feeding the deer isn't, as I understand it, currently the issue. And yeah, I can look at what the fines are with the solicitor and go from there.
Yeah, well, just so you understand, one phone call, two of them actually said that the deer had reared up and with its hoof went at them. Now, there's no damage, but obviously the deer is feeling threatened. It feels as though this area is theirs now because his neighbor keeps feeding, and there are upwards of a dozen or more deer on their property.
So in a case like that, if we can find evidence, that does become a situation. If you have an aggressive deer, then that becomes a DNRR problem, theoretically, if we can get them to respond to it.
Yeah,
So
but they
again,
all look
that's-
the same, so.
Yeah, and then that's the point.
I have to disagree, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, well. yeah,
Because
the
if
deer-
anyone was feeding the deer at my property, they'd go broke because I have a full herd and they all look unique. So to the point, I've named them, even though they're driving me crazy.
Oh, well,
And
maybe you
Mr.
want to
Fox
name
loves-
this one then.
Mr. Fox loves to talk deer, but it is, I had 2 calls last week, and I will say, people do not want to call themselves and report it, but, it's secondhand. I mean, I know they're feeding the deer, and it is problematic, and it is causing problems for residents. It is.
Yeah, and-
Councillor Pryor was at my house the other day dropping something off. Do I not have a herd? Correct, and it's problematic to the point I won't let my grandchildren go in the backyard because I'm afraid of ticks, but.
Is the complainant's name made public, or is it kept?
It's
not made public unless it goes to court, in which case we may have to have a witness come forward.
Okay.
so so in order to issue the fine and have the fine enforced, it does become a public issue because you do end up in court.
Because I know it's difficult to complain against a neighbor.
Yeah,
Everybody wants to get along with their neighbor, right? So anyway, it is a problem.
Yeah.
We haven't solved it, and maybe in this particular area of town, maybe we need to take a close look as if there's any environmental zones in which we do have, little bits of ravine in which we can extend the hunt to a second area within the town. Is that an option?
We have, in fact, this year's hunt, we did exactly that.
Yes.
And we'll continue to look for the sites. But to be honest, one of the concerns I have go back to Councillor Graham's, I don't know if we have the DNR staff now to come in and help us approve the sites. That's something we have to find out if we have local staff now that can do that. Because it is going to complicate us having our sites approved, and we go through a full process with the local staff. They've been fantastic, but I don't know if they're at our disposal anymore, to be honest.
We need
So
to find that out.
So we do need to find that out.
Yeah.
And to Mr. Fox's point, it's not just deer. So if you have a neighbor who loves birds and they attract 100 pigeons into their yard and then they crap all over, they poop all over somebody's house, that would be a violation of the bylaw. Because again, now you're creating a nuisance for your neighbor. And so those types of things, so it is a feeding of wild animals, not just feeding deer. And the bylaw does read when it creates a nuisance, because again, we don't intend on policing, bird feeders and things like that. But when it does create a problem, and when you attract a herd of deer, and the lady in question 10 years ago had a barrel of apples in her backyard to feed the deer. And
So I do have a little
created the-
experience with bird feeders, not much, but a little experience with bird feeders. And I can tell you that there's a difference between bird feeders as how much seed is spilt when the deer when the birds are feeding. It's those bird feeders that spill, or where people put a board on the ground and put seed on the ground, that's attracting deer or other animals.
And rats as well.
Yeah, but there are bird feeders that just the birds can access feed, and they're very good. They work, and perhaps the town needs to put out a little bit of an information pamphlet on which bird feeders are appropriate for town use, not rural use, but town use. I'll leave it at that, but it's an ongoing issue, and I'm not going to let it go until we have the deer controlled. So thank you very much.
I believe you, Deputy. You're as passionate as former Deputy Mayor Chisholm was about the deer. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, I just want to say that what a busy month we had, and there were so many wonderful events with the African Heritage Month, and then also I want to thank Megan Burgess and Downtown Truro Partnership, Sarah Bell and Logan, and Councillor Pryor, who came with me up to Parkland for Valentine's Day. It was a lovely event. And I received a lovely note today. I just want to share this because sometimes, you know, we never hear enough of the kindness. And it's about our year in review, which I'm very proud of. And it was on my desk when I came into the office this morning. It said, "Congratulations on a very attractive and informative year in review. It is the best news pamphlet that I've ever received. Everything has been highlighted and with pertinent information. Thank you to you and your staff for the job well done." And that is a very kind note from Mrs. Giddens up at, I think it's on Hillcrest Street, the envelope said. So thank you very much for that kind note. And I always hear such great things about the year in review. People keep these from year to year, and they're very informative. A lot of people keep them right at their fingertips. So it was great. And I think, Mr. Dolter, you can attest that we had a very busy February.
Yes, we did.
And
Just as far as the year in review, Madam Mayor, I have to take my hats off to staff there, particularly Allison Grant,
yes,
and
Michaela Carroll.
Amanda Bent,
Amanda
and
Bent,
Michaela.
yes.
I've done a great
They
job.
did a great job, and it's so take a bow in that. I just want to remind everyone that International Women's Day is March the 8th. And tomorrow evening, I've got a whole troop of Girl Guides coming in here, and I'm looking forward to it. They wanted to talk to the mayor about the town and all kinds of good things. So I'm always looking forward to that when young girls take an interest in government. So that's good. Is there any further questions? I don't see any. So we're going to move on to number 8, Mr. Dolter, and that is new business, and it is the project charters.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to introduce this to council in more of a public forum, just to kind of to show some of the things that we're, from a staff perspective, are looking at address and becoming, improving our processes and efficiency overall. I'm just going to, So again, my title, I did this yesterday, and my title page obviously dropped the title, so hopefully the rest of the presentation doesn't go the same way. Oops. So just in general, Madam Mayor, so the purpose of the project charter and the policy that we put together, which council has in their package to review, was to ensure consistency from a governance, accountability, and a transparency perspective for all of our projects. And those are both big and small, and the policy outlines where the charter would take effect. And what we want to do is we want to have a formal project charter that in most cases would have to be completed before a project actually started, just to make sure that things were covered off. It's really to formalize the process, ensure there's a full understanding of all the projects, both among staff and in some cases, depending on the size, with council, and the activities that meet the scope of the policies and provide consistency have been laid out in the policy, so we understand when the document's going to be used. So all aspects of activities are considered, and we wanted to make sure that the right people are brought in to discussions to minimize the chance that issues can develop. And again, this, again, as I said, was for some of the major projects, but also even the smaller ones that we established within among staff or we set up internally. So as far as the policy statements, project charter is required for all municipal projects that meet or exceed the defined thresholds in financial impact, organizational complexity, or strategic significance. The charter serves as the foundation document outlining the objectives, the scope, the stakeholders, and the resource commitments that we're making for the particular project. The charter is the responsibility of the department that initiates the project, or or who it's been assigned to by myself. It provides the initial information, and the draft document is circulated to all departments, identifying who should be involved in the project. So again, the person that's initiating it will put down the particular departments that they think should be involved, and in fact that can be added to as we go through if there's things that we come up through the process. So we'll make adjustments throughout, depending on the requirements. As we all know, things change. The complete and approved charter becomes the foundation document used to guide and define the project itself. And depending on the scale of the project, charter will go to council for its information and ensure full understanding of the project. So again, we want, when we're doing something, particularly and as we enter our budget period, many of the items that council will see as far as the capital list are going to be subject to a charter, and again, those will come back to council to ensure understanding as we go through the process. So as far as what is the thresholds that trigger the project charter? So financial thresholds, estimated total costs exceeding $100,000, including consulting, purchase of equipment, and internal labor. Funded externalities, projects involving external funding or grant funding, where reporting is required on an ongoing basis. So many of the, in fact, all of the federal programs or provincial programs that we enter into require reporting during and on completion of the project. So again, a project charter would be drafted in order to lay that out and certainly lay the proportionality of where the funding's coming from, particularly where municipality may be funding a portion of it as well. Cross-departmental impacts, projects involving 2 or more municipal departments or requires interdepartmental coordination. So it may be a project that is strictly engineering, but development planning may be involved from a planning perspective, so a project charter would come into play there. Strategic or regulatory significance, projects align with council-approved strategic priorities or impacts service delivery to residents. So initiatives that are required for regulatory compliance as well too. So again, it's fairly encompassing. Operational risk, projects introducing new technology platforms, major process changes, or affecting critical infrastructure, projects with high reputation or legal risk if not executed properly. So again, the technology platform, a good example is as we bring forth our ERP process, our enterprise resource software that we're going to be implementing over the next few years. Again, the project charter will be brought forward, and I think it's really important there, in that case, to explain the process to council and to actually for staff to fully think out what has to be done for that project as we go through. So project duration is also another triggering point. Projects that anticipate to take longer than 6 months to complete. So multi-year projects would also be included. So again, those could be of a capital nature, or in the case of something even like if the EDIA process were in place when we actually started the project, something like EDIA, because it covers multiple years. So again, that's an example there. So, and from a governance perspective, the charter must be approved by the project sponsor and the CEO before the project commences. So initially, again, as we go through, I will sign off in order to ensure that we go forward. And council received a blank or just a generic project charter in their package, but I took the liberty of, with my outdated computer skills, which I used to be a lot better at, I actually, in front of you or on the screen actually is the project charter we initiated, and Mr. Browning talked about the office renovation. So again, this is the project for the office renovation. So again, you'll see it talks about the project background and exactly why we're doing it. So that's fully understood. And in fact, this one was an evolving one because it initially started as an engineering project, and it included my office and then corporate services. There was a small work to be done there. And because it also affected development and planning, we're freeing up an office space. Mr. Fox's department was also included. So again, we look at and I can provide a hard copy of this to council after, because I realize some of the wording did overlap. So goals and objectives, just outline the goals, why exactly, what the goals at the end of the day. In this case, create office space in Town Hall Department of Engineering, to have the office of the town's manager strategic initiatives and communications moved to the first floor by the CAO's office, to free up space in development planning, and to have additional workspace created on the first floor in corporate services. So again, lays out those goals and the objectives to renovate and conduct such that it minimizes the extent of the displacement of staff and disruption of day-to-day work, and to have the renovation be completed in a cost-effective and reasonable manner. And then strategic alignment. We just talk about, in all cases, we'll be talking about how the particular project aligns with the strategic plan. And, and again, if it doesn't, in some cases, we shouldn't be doing it unless there's some regulatory reason why we have to do it. Then we talk about the final project summary. And then, again, I won't read all that, just goes to the details of what's going to be done, just so we have full understanding. The key deliverables in this case, is the 3 new individual offices, one by the CAO's space, 1 new workspace in the Department of Corporate Services, and new office furniture, in this case for engineering, planning, and new office furniture for the manager of strategic initiatives and communications as she leaves her office furniture behind in planning. And then the scope, the project will deliver, and then again, you can see those new individual office space, and then I won't go down through those, it's fairly, but again, it is comprehensive. And then most importantly, conditions of success, the project will be successful. The work can be tendered and awarded by mid-February, which it has been. The contractor retained to complete the work is complete and efficient and cooperative. The work is within the office area of the Department of Engineering, can be sustainably completed by mid-May, substantially completed, sorry. And the work on the first floor is substantially completed by June. And then preliminary budget, again, important here, preliminary, in this case is $61,000, and as Mr. Browning already indicated, the initial tender was under what we forecasted, but again, that $61,000 will be used up for some of the other requirements of furniture and the like, again, with that project. And then there's related documents at the end, so anything, plans or anything will be attached to the document in order so that it's encapsulated with the scope of the project. And then driving factors, talk about the the project scope, medium, project schedule is very important, and then the project budget, obviously medium importance, again, small budget here. One important thing that always should be understood with any project is what you're assuming. So again, we list the assumptions that are driving the project, and then the quality management, again, what drives the and how we're going to control the overall quality of the project. In this case, it's going to be overseen by Department's project engineer for Public Works, and then construction contract will be managed by the Director of Engineering in Public Works and the project engineer to ensure that that's done properly. And one of the important things, I think, with any project is actually the risk management. We talk about the availability, in this case, excuse me, of availability of contractors. If that doesn't happen, what that means, high impact, and then, sorry. Some of the other factors that are important. Again, uncovering unknown existing conditions, significant impacts, considered low, but financial could be medium, although, ample investigative efforts have been conducted. So again, just speaking to the fact that we've considered a lot of things in going forward, so we feel the financial risk is only medium. Stakeholders are listed there, so everybody knows who is involved. And again, typically we would have council listed as a stakeholder because, again, overall the budget's been approved by council, and if it goes awry, I'm sure council will be concerned. Completion criteria, in this case, that the offices are constructed, the operating engineer and project engineer and different engineers have been involved, and Department of Corporate Service has their new office space, and all deficiencies have been taken care of. So with the project team, again, who does what? Again, in this case, you see the design, tendering, construction, or construction administration are listed there, and then with the codes that are provided there. For example, Mr. Browning, for the design, is under I, he's a person to be informed of the progress of the activity with the scope, whereas the project engineer, she is C, which is she is the person consulted during the completion and the activities for the overall project, because she's guiding it through. And again, you can read the codes there. Some people are there for information. Some people are there for to be consulted through the process. And then council's listed there, as you can see, to be informed of the progress of the activities as we go through. So again, lays out the full scope and in detail so everybody can understand what's going to go on. And then the most important thing at the end of the document, proof that everybody has signed off, understand their role, and say, again, we want people to make sure that we have the right people involved. And as we go through, if something in addition has to be added, we can do that throughout. So again, these will be documents that will start off looking one way, particularly for the larger projects. They'll be amended as required and as the situation changes. And again, so it is a dynamic document, but I think it's a good step forward, a change in process. It actually was brought forward at a private industry. I'll give Ms. Russell credit for bringing it forward. She started talking about project charters, and I said, "What's that?" And then she showed it to me, and I went, "Okay, this is exactly what we need." It's probably what's been missing. We've done a lot of things over the years very successfully, unofficially. We've had documents, tender documents, and followed through. But again, I think it's important to have a formal document that everybody can refer to, and certainly from a council perspective, they know exactly what's going on with the larger projects. So again, I'll take any questions, Madam Mayor. That's the end. And these are the documents that typically, in this case, because it's a construction project, would be attached to just simply the floor plans. And then that gives everybody a chance that we're listed as some interest in the project can review and make sure there's no concerns from them, that have to be amended going through.
Thank you very much. Councillor Talbot?
Yes. Mike, is there any particular reason? A couple of things I was hoping for were a penalty schedule for misagreed upon deadlines and an off-ramp if completely goes sideways.
So this is the charter that drives staff. So this talks about the project. What you're talking about would be in the contract. So in the case of, a larger contract, those we'd have that built into the contract documents. This is not the contract. This is the document that guides staff and council through the process on what we're going to do, so everybody understands the full scope. So larger projects, this is a smaller one. A much larger project, there would be a little bit more detail in the document that, and eventually, and in fact, I would see where we have a construction contract, that probably would be part of the project charter and be added to that. I think at this point, I was trying to figure out who should hold all these. I talked to Ms. Grant about actually being the repository for these, so that we have, obviously, the department in charge of the project would hold a copy of it, but I want to make sure we have a master copy and all the project charters are in one area. So if anybody wanted to see it, we could put our hands on it fairly quickly.
Just to actually to go and build off of that a bit, whatever, this particular contract for the office renovation does indeed have liquidated damages in it for not completing.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Nope. That's me.
You. You're up. Okay, sorry, my screen's different. Okay, go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Jolter. Just wanted to ask some questions. You did mention that this is, the constraints or the requirements are fairly comprehensive. I am curious, how many projects is this going to impact? Ballpark figure of what percentage, and what extra overhead this is going to add for staff?
It really won't. It won't put on any additional overhead, really, because at the end of the day, most of what's in the project charter are things that we did.
Mm-hmm.
We would have meetings and all that, but the documentation on that would be minimal, and there may be situations where, particularly for smaller projects, so, we may have gaps in or delays in people getting involved. what the intent of the charter is to bring everybody that's estimated, get everybody around the table initially, start drafting the document on what it's going to look like, and then anybody that may not be at the table that should be can be included up front. Don't see that being a big issue. For the most part, many of the capital works projects probably will be here, most of our multi-year projects. Where I don't see it being involved, even though the dollar value would be there, for example, we're going to buy a salt truck. You don't need a project charter for that because that's a large item procurement. So even though it meets the dollar value threshold, it wouldn't be included. So, and in some cases, it'll be a judgment call. I can't give you a definitive number. I'd say, you know, a lot of our bigger capital items will be, and more of our ongoing initiatives will be included. But again, staff will kind of look at it and say, do we need a project charter for that? And we probably then will be initiated, and certainly items that fall under the policy, it'll be automatic.
Okay, because obviously this is probably something that Mr. Browning and I are a little bit more familiar with as project managers. The project charter is a critical piece. I do see it as value. I wonder if maybe even you say, oh, well, we need a salt truck. We're not going to have a project for that. That's procurement. Makes sense. Is there going to be a procurement project at some point that says, maybe brings in the fleet maintenance study? Here's our asset management. This is where we're at. This is this much needs replacing. Is there a larger project that just sort of looks at all of the assets in sort of in the bigger picture?
As far as you mean an asset management project?
I don't know if it's so much an asset management project, but just looking at, like, say, the upcoming capital budget. If we're saying, well, this is the procurement that needs to be done, is that part of a project that, again, to Councillor Talbot's point, then brings in if the equipment is not procured, if there are other items missed, are there penalties for the suppliers, et cetera?
Typically, because of the way I think most of us do procure, and because of timelines and differences in procurement, each of those equipment items would be individual items and handled by the department or through the procurement officer. I mean, I don't want to overcomplicate procurement. I mean, the difference with procurement is that what replaces the project charter is the RFP document. So everybody needs to be involved in that, and so there is a document that supports larger item procurement. Again, but we'll certainly take a look at that. If there's any item that we think would benefit from a project charter, we would do that. But again, I don't see a requirement, like I don't see procuring those items as being a large project, because again, they're more individually time and individually based, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, last question.
Yes, thank you. This has to do with cost overruns, et cetera, and I looked at finances, and can you just address that, the whole thing of cost overruns, unforeseen add-ons, these sort of things?
So
that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, one of the things about the charter itself, so again, as I mentioned, is a dynamic document. So as we're going through, we talk about the risks. So if any of those risks come into play, there are, inflation, COVID, things like that, then we go back to amend the charter, we amend the budget, and this would be the process to inform council as we make those changes. So the preliminary budget, in this case, wasn't complicated, $61,000. The project charter on a large project would have the preliminary budget breakdown as included with the charter. And for some of those larger projects, we'd put that in front of council to approve that initial budget as part of the charter.
And so you put limits on that as well?
Yes, so that would be the initial funding. Then if there was changes that exceeded, every project like that would have a contingency budget. If we got to the point we were exceeding the contingency and we needed more money, that would come back to council, and council will approve the amended budget or change the scope of the project if that was a requirement, if we had that flexibility to change the scope, and that recommendation have to be made if there was no further money available. But yeah, that would be part of the process of amending and changing the charter as we went through.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Dolter.
Thank you very much, Deputy. We're good on that? Mr. Dolter, all good?
Good for me.
Okay. This now brings us to the end of our public council meeting. I want to thank council staff, our CAO, and our solicitor. Our next public council meeting is going to be Monday, April the 13th at 1 p.m., where our Director Russell will be presenting the budget. I will bring the Tylenol. And I want to thank everyone for being with us today. Continue to be kind to each other and be kind to our town. The Town of Truro Public Council meeting is adjourned today at 4:03 p.m. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.